When under a heavy, overcast sky, a group of fearless men strides loudly right into the children's shelter. A panicked worker screams that hunters led by the legendary Hong Zukgong have just breached the building. Meanwhile, a uniformed officer reports to her team that every single child is accounted for, meaning they found the right facility. Suddenly, the thick glass partition keeping the kids trapped is shattered with a single punch. The terrified children stare in silence at the imposing man who gently asks if they are all right. With a warm smile, Hong Zukgong promises that they will never be caged again. The kind hunter picks up a startled little boy, holding him close while asking if he has any injuries. Nearby, police officers tackle the cruel guards who kept the children locked away. The young boy watches in absolute disbelief as the orphanage director, once so arrogant, is now sobbing and begging for mercy, with his face pressed against the cold floor. Sweat pours down the terrified director's face, completely stripped of all his former power. Hong Zukgong kindly asks the young boy his name, while officers lead the other children to safety. Still, the quiet child wonders how he could have displeased this powerful savior. Trying to stay calm, he softly answers that he is 12th. That is his only name. At first, the seasoned hunter cannot believe his ears. The hero looks deeply saddened, and he gently moves the child back. Stepping away, Hong Zukgong redirects his cold, furious gaze toward the trembling director. Pure rage takes over, and the hunter begins brutally kicking the pathetic abuser. For daring to treat defenseless children like animals, he unleashes a barrage of heavy punches right into the director's face, splitting his nose bloody and knocking out a tooth. The amazed 12th silently watches the incredible, terrifying strength of Hong Zukgong, whom nobody can stop. Suddenly, an inspector arrives. Hong Zukgong asks what brings her here, but the furious woman barks at him to step away from the suspect immediately. She admits she appreciates his timely assistance, but his reckless violence is causing a major scene. The confused boy asks if this lady is the boss of the powerful uncle beside him. With a soft smile, the inspector replies that she is not, but she still reprimands him whenever he misbehaves. 12th notes that his old lab director always yelled at his assistants. With a faint smile, the lady promises that the director will face justice. Staring directly at her, the quiet boy points out that she seems weak, asking if she is really not a hunter. The inspector confirms that she possesses no grand powers, but warns the child never to judge people solely by their strength. She explains that there are far better ways to punish criminals than the raw, reckless violence Hong Zukgong relies on. 12th asks what it takes to join her side, and the inspector says he must study diligently and pass the exam. 19 years pass in a flash. At the Ability Management Agency, a worker reports that the first and second mountain dungeons have surged in threat levels, yet his lazy coworkers just lounge around all afternoon, leaving him wondering why they even chose to become hunters. The serious 12th warns that even inside B-class dungeons and cave portals, careless hunters face extreme danger due to the sudden spikes in difficulty. Apparently, the second squad is assigned to handle the B2 level gate over in Yandinpo, and nobody raises an objection. He orders the second group to Tian Cave, letting the third and fourth groups rest after their exhausting mission. The young man then instructs one of the team leaders to double-check all their gear. Every single piece of equipment must be in place before they set out later today. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the young man checks his watch and asks if anyone has questions. Hearing nothing, he dismisses the second group for lunch, but tells them to stay on high alert. Meanwhile, their commander just yawns, casually stretching his arms forward. Walking down the hall, the crew complains about being absolutely starving. It's been a long time since their last meal. Smiling, the leader notices the gloomy Yujin. He decides to walk up and ask if something is bothering her. Still tense, she asks him about that dungeon she mentioned earlier. He shrugs. They only send teams there once the risk hits level 2. But the girl admits she still has a very bad feeling about this place. The guy replies that they can't just close a cave over a simple hunch. The media would tear them apart, and he warns her not to abuse her authority. Annoyed, she fires back that he's the one abusing his position right now. Smiling, the boss asks where she could ever find a more qualified shabo. She snaps back, threatening that she would have happily killed him by now if she could. He just laughs it off, reminding her that attacking an official comes with heavy consequences. Still deeply unsettled, Eugene warns him again that something feels terribly wrong. But he just smiles. His shift is over and he's finally off duty. He's on vacation now, so he asks her to stop bothering him. Besides, she's going underground. No signal down there anyway. She's left feeling completely helpless. Cut to 2 days later, and our hero is in Busausen. He's showing off a special watch created in a government mana research lab. He brags to the girls about his job at the Ability Management Agency. Their technology makes life much easier for hunters working inside the dungeons. Turns out this impressive guy is a close partner of the organization's director. Hearing this, the gorgeous blonde is completely blown away. They start talking about the nation's top hunter, the legendary Hong Shakyon, who also happens to be his father. Shocked, the girl asks if that's really true. Our hero smiles softly, clarifying that Shakyon is actually his adoptive father. He lost his real parents in a tragic accident when he was just a kid. It's a painful memory, but the agency's director saved his life and took him in. He worked tirelessly to repay that kindness, and now he serves directly under his savior. He makes it clear that he isn't some spoiled rich kid living off a name. He earned every bit of his success through sheer grit and a reputation for fairness. He's no saint, though. He definitely uses his license to get ahead. One of the curious girls asks what actually brought Hitch all the way to Busausen. He explains that he took a vacation to celebrate his big new promotion. He didn't even plan to come, but his boss threatened to fire him for never taking time off. He hadn't taken a single day off all year. Do they mind? Not at all. They're completely captivated by his story, and honestly, they're dying to see his watch again. On his wrist is a highly advanced, multimodal hunter communication device. But for the sake of simplicity, everyone just calls it a manage. He explains that the device binds directly to the owner's unique mono waves. HJ showed her how the device worked, and she happily mentioned seeing the dungeons on the news. Dungeons from the news. Suddenly, she froze in complete shock. The girl shouted that the cave threat level was rapidly spiking. It's digital. Display flashed bright red, signaling that Seoul was no longer safe. No one knew what to do. They stared at the screen, reading the terrifying reports about the underground collapse. It was deeply disturbing news. Right then, HJ's phone started buzzing. He grabbed his ringing phone and answered it without a single second of hesitation. He doubted anything truly terrible could happen during a simple D-rank raid. But with so many people crowded in this area, any incident would be catastrophic. Suddenly, the voice on the other end reported that half of Songpa was completely destroyed. Hearing this devastating news, HJ immediately demanded a helicopter be sent to his location. Flying back, HJ tried to stay calm, figuring that the situation must be under control. After all, the powerful agency director was already on site to handle the threat. Over the radio, HJ joked about having a wonderful vacation, dripping with pure sarcasm. But then his monoclock suddenly shut down, and the pilot sounded the alarm. The pilot warned of bizarre anomalies moving directly beneath them. It turned out a massive horde of monsters was swarming below, ready to obliterate everything. The shocked HJ then received a system alert that changed everything. Every single dungeon across the nation had suddenly collapsed on June 2nd. Breaking news confirmed this global catastrophe was happening all around the world. It was not just South Korea. HJ realized they could not go back. Returning to Busausen was impossible now, so he suggested searching for any survivors. With no aerial threats in sight, HJ knew he had to save who he could. He headed back to the ruined headquarters, driven by a deep sense of duty. Moving quickly, the fearless hunter began tearing through the monsters in his way. The beasts did not even stand a chance. Soon, mangled corpses littered the ground. Ruined buildings and charred civilian cars lay scattered across the decimated landscape. HJ desperately tried to get his communications device working, but it was dead. Suddenly, a system notification popped up with a grim update about the director. No life signs detected for the agency director, Hong Shuk-yong. HJ stood frozen, unable to process that the nation's strongest hunter was gone. He had fought so hard just to secure a quiet, peaceful retirement for himself. He was so incredibly close to that goal. Now, he desperately needed hope. Finding survivors was his only lifeline. Just then, a strange sound echoed behind him. HJ whipped around, his senses on high alert as he tracked the noise. He saw Eugene bleeding heavily from her wounds and rushed to her side, terrified. Even on the verge of death, she weakly scolded him not to call her aunt. HJ quickly asked what happened, and she explained that a massive centipede had escaped. That beast from the Bangadin dungeon was the start of this entire nightmare. Without wasting a second, HJ uncorked a healing potion to treat her injuries. Eugene weakly muttered that the creature's poison was already in her system, making it useless. But HJ refused to give up, continuing to pour the liquid onto her wounds. Gritting her teeth, Eugene reminded him that she had warned him to raid that dungeon. But he had ignored his instincts. Now, she weakly sighed that it was over. She muttered that he would die here too, but HJ simply asked what she meant. What a difference it made. The bleeding Jaeyun hands him their master's shiny pendant, asking him to keep it as a keepsake. Without thinking twice, he takes the precious token, falling dead silent as he stares down, reflecting on everything falling apart around them. The dying girl had searched for him, hoping she was right since he was Hong Xiaokyung's adoptive son, meaning this token belonged in his hands, but he quietly reminds her that they are not blood-related. Even so, Jaeyun weakly begs him to at least give the master a proper funeral. Choking back tears, the young man tightly squeezes her trembling hand, begging her not to dare die in his arms. Clutching her deep wound, the girl whispers that death is not something she can control, feeling lucky to have survived this long. She smiles, remembering how he used to follow her everywhere, calling her Nuna, teasingly adding that he was once cute but grew up way too stubborn. Then Jaeyun tells him to grab the sword nearby and look away, but he just tells her to shut up. He desperately promises to call her Nuna again while she gently urges him to take her blade, knowing he only uses spears. With a faint, peaceful smile, she softly pleads with the young warrior to just stay alive, since too many people have already died. A moment later, her eyes lose focus, leaving him completely alone. Drowned in absolute silence, he gently reaches down to close her lifeless eyes. He must move forward now, though he cannot fathom how to go on in a world where everything has been destroyed, and yet he still reaches out and grips her sword. Nearby, a massive dead centipede rots on the grounds of the agency. He cannot believe that even for seasoned hunters, whose bodies rarely survive, so many comrades had to perish to slay a single beast. He stands there entirely lost, wondering if there is any point to searching for other survivors in this ruin. Right now, it is entirely unclear if anyone made it out alive. Suddenly, the blade of his fallen friend begins to pulse with a chaotic, violent power that is extremely hard to control. A massive shockwave blasts straight into the colossal centipede's corpse, a sight both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Glancing around, shocked, he realizes the giant beast's remains have completely vanished into thin air. Honestly, where did it go? He stands there tense, finding absolutely no answers. Through the dust, his sharp eyes spot a metallic device, emitting a bright yellow beam of light. Retrieving it, the young warrior mutters that he has never heard of monsters dropping loot like in some game. Examining it, he wonders what kind of bizarre watch this is, when suddenly a system check is triggered. A robotic voice announces that user authorization is delayed, starting an emergency system download. As the artificial intelligence bombards him with alerts, the utterly confused young man cannot make sense of any of it. Now the system is loading an automatic sequence, prompting him to execute it. First, it asks him to set a date, and now it demands direct action, which feels incredibly sketchy. On edge, he demands to know what it wants, but receives no clear response. Suddenly, a colossal shadow towers over him, and the system flashes a critical warning. A threat has been detected. But the young warrior knows this thing is far worse than any centipede. It didn't possess anywhere near that level of energy, but this mysterious thing was different. It had compressed South Korea into a single zone, making survival odds practically zero. Entering battle meant certain doom. Still, the eager young man called out to the AI. He ordered the artificial system to act, and his identity was instantly verified. An emergency protocol started, but he lacked the clearance. He couldn't identify the massive beast, leaving the confused hero completely helpless. Survival meant running away, but he highly doubted escaping was even an option. As the robotic voice kept droning, the frustrated fighter snapped and screamed at it to shut up. He just wanted to get out alive. Suddenly, a random teleportation sequence was triggered. Moments later, Hyukjin snapped awake as someone repeatedly slapped him across the face. A group of students crowded around, with one telling him to take it easy. They had patched up his wounds, but warned him not to move too fast just yet. The dazed fighter understood nothing, especially when a girl asked if he was a hunter. She pointed at the stray sword resting right beside him. He remained silent. Hyukjin silently wondered how this place was intact if it was destroyed years ago. He couldn't grasp why these kids were wearing the old Hunter Academy uniforms. The girl kept fussing over his condition, but his focus was elsewhere. Staring at an ancient computer on a nearby desk, he tried to make sense of this reality. The screen displayed the year 2024, shocking him to his very core. Suddenly, the harsh Yunwook shoved a quiet kid aside, barking at him to get lost. Hearing that familiar voice, the already bewildered Hyukjin froze in absolute disbelief. Running into this person was the last thing he expected here. Yunwook spoke up. He couldn't waste precious time waiting around for this strange older guy to wake up. Crossing his arms with an annoyed scowl, the boy demanded to know if Hyukjin understood. Instead of replying, Hyukjin calmly got to his feet, completely brushing them off. He turned his back on the group, blocking out their complaining as he analyzed the situation. And here is the mind-blowing part. How did he end up thrown so far into the past? On April 5th of this year, a herd of black buffalo had devastated Seoul. Out of 46 people trapped inside, only 5 would make it out alive. Hyukjin stood frozen in place, desperately trying to piece the puzzle together. He was haunted by his final moments before slipping into darkness. The highway had been a graveyard of bodies. Both Ji-young and the director perished there. He also recalled a bizarre artifact left behind when the centipede finally vanished. Yet he still couldn't fathom the truth of his regression. Honestly, who could blame him for doubting this absurd second chance at life? During his academy days, Hyukjin had rigorously studied this exact historical tragedy. He had even written a detailed thesis on the collapse of these underground tunnels. Back then, all dungeons were handled manually right in the heart of Seoul under heavy surveillance. Greedy guild executives, eager to claim the glory, made a fatal decision. They classified this dungeon as a B-rank threat, ignoring its actual danger. In reality, it was a deadly level 5 zone. Teenagers were sent to fight. These student hunters did everything to shield civilians, but they were vastly outmatched. This disaster ruined the academy and forced the government to rewrite the laws entirely. New regulations were established to strictly govern active combatants. Armed with the future, Hyukjin knew he could rewrite this horrific tragedy himself. He had the legendary sword of the late Yujin, so he decided to ask the students. He asked how long it had been since the cave collapsed, but they just looked confused. Our hero wondered aloud if they had not even covered this basic topic in class. An eager girl chimed in, explaining they were actually supposed to study it that very day. Once he heard the cave fell about 4 hours ago, he pressed for the exact time. The brown-haired girl explained they lost contact 2 hours ago. All they knew was that the hunters had grouped up to fight the dungeon boss. Their director was on that team, and Hija recalled how much guilt that man carried. He had been so hyper-focused on the monster raid that he completely missed the students dying. Suddenly, the hot-tempered Hana cut in, completely killing the conversation. He claimed he did not want to be rude, but boldly demanded to know who Hija actually was. He even asked to see Hija's hunter license, arguing they could not trust a complete stranger. To everyone's utter shock, our fearless warrior calmly claimed he had lost the document. In truth, his old license was right there in his wallet. But Hija quickly realized he did not have the proper modern paperwork on him anyway. So even if his lie worked, they still would not let him near that cave. Remaining perfectly calm, he looked at the students and asked if they needed real proof. Out of nowhere, the fighter suddenly drew and swung his sword. A terrifying wave of energy erupted from the blade, catching everyone off guard. Now there was zero doubt he was a real hunter, giving the students a glimmer of hope. They finally believed they might escape, especially since a wealthy heir was trapped alongside them. Since the successor of a massive conglomerate was here, backup was surely on the way. Surely a rescue team was already rushing to save this VIP, the youngest son of the family. Despite the chaos, this rich kid was acting like absolutely nothing was wrong. The Lee Sunyoung family cherished him deeply. After his death, they kept the hunter school alive and built a massive agency. But the clever Hija decided to rewrite this tragic kid's destiny. He wanted to forge a brand new path, keeping him safe from the shadows. Then, out of nowhere, Hija announced they were heading straight for City Hall. An angry old man immediately lost his mind, screaming if he had gone completely insane. But Hija remembered the future testimonies, recalling how the higher-ups ignored the kids. They were dismissed as being far too young and completely inexperienced. Hija calmly asked if they were tired of living, sending the old man into a rage. The old man barked about being threatened, but Hija simply told him to shut his mouth. Our hero pointed out that running away alone would be easy, but he refused to do it. He could not just abandon these kids, though anyone else was free to leave. A panicked girl quickly spoke up, arguing they could not possibly split up now. Hija calmly explained he was actually trying to save even the most ungrateful souls here. Hearing this, the grumpy old man finally began to quiet down a bit. Hija then asked if anyone was familiar with the local Mongdong region. One girl offered to sketch a map, and pointing to it, Hija laid out his plan. Since the hunters targeted the boss 2 hours ago, they had likely cornered the miner. They probably drove the giant miner up into the mountains by now. Buffalo monsters surely followed their leader, meaning the main roads would be mostly clear. Only a few lost strays would be left on the roads. Pointing to the map, the thoughtful leader asks the students what they know about it. One student answers, it is a cordon where hunters are setting up defenses. They must establish a perimeter to keep those wild creatures from breaking out. Another student suggests simply hiding inside the building and waiting out the storm. Defeat the boss and the dungeon collapse stops. It is that simple. But the hero explains that the Buffaloes only follow the miner. But they lost their leader. Now, everything is about to get way worse. Hay turns to the stressed group. Any objections? No one speaks. Silence, smiling politely, the boy asks if any mages can draw runes. The mages step up, tracing glowing symbols right onto their comrades' foreheads. The veteran hunter watches closely, warning them not to mess this up. He reminds them that monsters are incredibly sensitive to the slightest hint of mana. Because of that, every single line of the runes has to be perfect. One startled girl asks if these weird symbols can actually mask their life force. The experienced fighter explains that the runes will block their natural energy. They conceal presence, but they cannot hide active spells that are already cast. Staying perfectly cool, he asks the rookies if they know how to trigger them. The main character tells them to focus their mana right into their heads. They must touch the runes the exact moment he leaves to draw the beasts away. He plans to bait the creatures himself, leading them on a wild chase. Once the beasts are distracted, the students must make a run for it. And look, he charges ahead, catching the beasts' attention. Those massive buffaloes are too slow and stupid to even realize what just happened. Sprinting ahead at high speed, the young man actually stops to mock them. He mutters to himself that the only thing missing from this run is a red rag. Back in the building, a shocked student wonders who this guy even is. Nervous Huno asks if that is seriously her biggest worry right now. One student guesses he is just a hunter sent to clean up this mess. Cheyenne adds that the man clearly knows way too many secrets about this place. Maybe he just got separated from his squad while heading toward the mountain. They guess he is part of the elite team escorting the boss. Kanak points out they have no choice but to put their trust in Hitchai. After all, Hitchai is the only one keeping those buffaloes busy right now. A nervous man in a green cap turns to ask if everyone is fully prepared. The old man promises to run like the wind and begs them to stay safe. The young leader replies that they really do not have any other option left. Suddenly, they spot the main character sprinting right back toward their group. Those massive monsters are hot on his heels, refusing to let him go. Charging forward to catch him, the brave hero suddenly comes to a dead stop. He swings the Yuji sword in a massive arc, drawing them all together. A wave of pure energy slams into the beasts, giving the students their window. Nervous Hunuk yells at his stunned comrades to move while they can. The melee fighters lead the charge, clearing the path straight ahead. Mages cover the flanks, keeping everyone safe from any sudden side attacks. The healer and the swordsman bring up the rear, protecting their escape route. He had to tend to the fallen. Suddenly, a terrifying beast lunged forward. It snuck up behind Lionji, glaring with bloodshot eyes, but right then Hiji stepped in. He rushed to the boy's defense, launching a fierce strike from the side, a heavy kick. Slammed right into the monster's skull, completely stunning the bewildered young student. Feeling the heavy pressure, our hero urged the boy to run for his life. But paralyzing terror locked the kid in place. He was on the verge of tears. There was no way he would abandon the brave fighter who just saved him. The calm warrior looked at him, then shifted focus to the remaining beasts. He unleashed a wave of magic, trapping every single monster in his grasp. Escape was impossible. In a flash of light, the entire battlefield completely shifted. Monsters were left stranded below, frantically searching around for their target. Standing high on a building, Hiji wondered where these hideous creatures were coming from. But there was no time to question things. He had to take them down. Shaking them off would be tough, even though grouping them up was his own plan. First, the reckless fighter had purposely drained almost all of his energy. He did this to lure the creatures in. Next, he unsealed Lionji's hidden scent. He exposed the wound masking Lionji's energy, luring the horned beasts right over. Just watch as they gather to tear the kid apart. Hiji makes his dramatic grand entrance. He easily takes the spotlight as the world's savior. Meanwhile, Lionji prayed for survival. He hoped everyone would make it out, wondering what his next move should be. Meeting his 10-year-old self was possible, but hopefully time travel rules were different here. He recalled the old mage's grim prophecy about the end of their world. He suspected all this chaos was tied directly to a single place. Everything pointed to the infamous Bangdan dungeon. He paused, deep in thought. Standing completely still, he tried to piece together the strange, unfolding reality. He decided to check his mana clock, hoping it still had enough juice. With quick, silent taps, his fingers flew across the digital display. He entered the commands, a heavy tension hanging in the air. Just like that, a soft smile crossed his face. His hunch was dead on. The screen read April 6th. Why this specific date, he wondered. Perhaps some higher power had chosen him to rewrite the destiny of humanity. Out of nowhere, desperate human screams echoed nearby, completely impossible for Hiji to ignore. A panicked hunter ran for his life, screaming about the monstrous bulls chasing them. Behind him, a massive horned beast swung a deadly war hammer. It wanted total slaughter, and the hunters realized the beasts were calling for reinforcements. Watching from afar, Hiji recognized these fighters as the Namsen Guild warriors. He chose not to interfere, knowing this team would ultimately defeat the boss. Leading the charge was their fearless director, smiling confidently amid the chaos. He casually ordered his squad to put all their focus on the boss. A true lineup of legendary Korean hunters was assembled right before Hiji's eyes. He watched the unfolding battle like a spectator in a front row seat. The warriors danced around the battlefield, using advanced skills to unbalance the enemy. Hiji immediately recognized the legendary magic of the Archmage, Kim Shaman. Her unique spells had vanished after her death, a massive loss to humanity. Even now, he still had no idea what truly caused her mysterious demise. Knowing he could be highly valuable to the world later on, our brave hero decides to start by clearing the Bangan dungeon to hunt down the very beast that put all of Seoul on edge. Plus, the clever guy plans to rescue the hunters and make them owe him big time, securing a sweet, lazy retirement for himself. Meanwhile, one of the bold hunters hacks off one of the giant bulls, limbs sending blood spraying everywhere. Immediately, Shaman Kim unleashes her grapevine magic, specifically her binding release technique. The furious beast roars out in sheer agony as thick, whipping vines wrap around its massive body from every single direction. She refuses to let up, channeling a relentless surge of raw power directly at the target, completely locking down the thrashing monster. Dark blood begins oozing from several deep tears in its hide, making it struggle just to stand. Now completely cornered, the beast goes absolutely berserk, ready to tear apart anything and anyone left in its path. Suddenly, the towering minotaur grips the handle of its colossal weapon, clearly done with playing around. With a brutal swing of its arms and a heavy shift of its weight, the bull slams the earth, shattering the ground in a wave of destruction. Seeing things spiral, the completely unfazed Hiji decides it is finally time to join the fray. Meanwhile, the stressed healer urges Han to sever the beast's remaining leg, and he immediately charges ahead to break through. Shaman Kim throws her arms wide open, shifting into a heavy casting stance to keep the pressure on. At the same time, the veteran hunter locks down the bull with thick bindings, putting every ounce of his strength into it. The beast fights back hard, bulging veins popping out all over its massive frame as it struggles. Finding the perfect opening, one of the hunters lands a precise strike, slicing a deep, bloody gash into the thick hide. More thorny branches sprout around it, sinking deep into the monster as its life force quickly drains away. The stunned young man has no idea how to react, having never expected things to end like this. Suddenly, the massive beast loses its footing and crashes hard to the earth, shaking the ground. Sensing danger, Hong Suk-go quickly scans the area and spots something highly unusual up on a nearby roof. He catches sight of a lone figure holding a long sword. Sukgong and his team stand frozen, utterly shocked to see what looks like an ordinary civilian holding a sword. Suddenly, the boy unleashes a tidal wave of insane magical pressure directly at the giant bull as it struggles to stand. The jaw-dropped hunters can only watch the insane display in total silence, unable to comprehend what is unfolding right before their eyes. The beast is utterly incinerated, powerless against this masterclass level of sheer destructive power. Looking completely unbothered, the strong teenager casually tells the group not to sweat it and to just go back to their business. The guild leader is totally speechless, demanding to know who this crazy kid is, but nobody has a single clue. With an eerie, calm vibe, our hero steps forward, asking if they are talking to him, quietly resting his hand on his sword. The quiet and mysterious Hiji claims he is just a passerby. He is quickly hauled off to an interrogation room, where an officer asks if Hong Suk-kyung is serious about handling this case personally. The clerk explains that the strange boy has no government registration, no awakening record, and absolutely zero fingerprints on file. He boasts about handling the database, completely confident in his own skills, while his partner warns him to stay alert. Meanwhile, the quiet warrior and the powerful agency director lock eyes in a quiet room, sharing a knowing, silent smile. Director Hong Shako mentions he disabled the security cameras along the hallway to this interrogation room so they could speak in peace, introducing himself first. Seeing this remarkably young director up close feels completely surreal for Hija, sparking deep nostalgia as if he is suddenly a helpless child again. Long ago, the powerful hunter rescued little Wuhaji, officially adopting him just 2 years later. Now holding out a crumpled, torn scrap of paper, the director asks if Hija recognizes the markings. Stunned, he instantly recalls seeing this exact symbol drawn on the secret laboratory walls, and his expression instantly tightens with alarm. He stares in utter confusion. The director expected this very reaction. The composed Hong Shak-kyung reassures him, telling the boy there is no reason to panic. He explains that Hija has really kept them on edge lately, while the bewildered youth wonders if this man truly knows his secrets. Realizing Hija never needed saving, the director shifts the topic to his flame. Blue Mana Blade, he introduces himself as the mentor Kim once mentioned, prompting the boy to assume he was just another informant from Bangju. However, all communication with their spy was suddenly lost after Kim fell, making the young warrior realize that their secret agent died with the healer. Hong Shak-kyung admits they want to crush those criminals just as badly and has already crafted a solid cover story to protect the boy's identity. This means Hija will no longer have to constantly bury his dark past, though he knows winning this clever director's trust will not be easy. Still, playing the role of a Bangju insider is highly convincing, since the story is partly true. His danger of being exposed drops dramatically. The director insists that the boy must work directly under his close supervision, refusing to let him run wild. Finally, the hunter extends his hand, offering a partnership to the stoic Hija, who quickly realizes the truth. They are partners again, but here is the twist: Hong Shak-kyung is not his father. Accepting his new reality, the youth politely agrees to work alongside the director. 1 week later, however, Hija looks absolutely miserable, wearing a dark, frustrated scowl that shows he is clearly unhappy with his current situation. Hong Shak-kyung casually asks if he likes his quarters, but Hija retorts with pure annoyance, asking how anyone would feel locked up for 7 days. The director points out that he visits daily, but the boy snaps back, accusing him of treating him like a common prisoner. Still, the director reminds him that preserving his freedom is already a massive victory worth celebrating. He just suspects the older man has far more calculating plans in mind. Suddenly, the director smiles warmly, telling him to just call him uncle. Cutting straight to business, Hong Shak-kyung asks if he remembers the students he rescued in Maundong. The clever boy immediately suspects the director knew about this all along, realizing this was just another test he passed. The director praises his actions, noting that those students escaped the trap unharmed. Without Hija's timely intervention, those young trainees would have suffered a grim fate. Hai-jae realized his opponent saw the whole clash, though the hunter still had no idea where those phantom bulls came from, but he was incredibly grateful to the young hero for rescuing the kids, making Hai-jae feel pretty awkward. Soon enough, at one Point the director spoke up, looking quite tense as he tried to explain his thoughts. Trouble was clearly coming. Still, the serious director knew perfectly well that without High J, every single one of his elite students would be dead. The gentleman added that it would be totally wrong not to thank him properly before reaching deep into a sealed envelope, unexpectedly. The director announced that this brave young man would now mentor his finest students, which completely shocked the kid. The strict Hong Shukyong said that if the young man went in as a dungeon escort, his presence would not arouse any suspicion. Our calm young man could barely believe that this director really wanted him teaching kids. No way, not many at the agency actually liked the director, so he tried to build some common ground with them. Haijay nervously argued that he lacked mana entirely, so he did not know what he could possibly teach kids. Smiling warmly, the uncle told him not to worry, explaining that fights can be won using unique spells, not just raw energy. With a subtle grin, he brought up those mysterious runes that hide life force. The director asked if our hero created them himself, and the young man wondered why this guy could not just keep quiet. Then Hong Shukzong admitted that they simply needed to gather all possible data on these strange symbols. Our hero thought he would be teaching combat, just regular dungeon clearing. But knowing so much would look highly suspicious for a runaway rogue hunter. Frustrated, Haijay snapped that these ancient symbols are not actual magic anyway, and insisted he was totally unfit to be a mentor, but the director was absolutely sure he would do an amazing job. Imagining this teaching gig in his mind, our hero decided to just claim that he invented the use of the symbols himself. He just had to show the kids how to activate them, and he would save countless lives. Laughing in amusement, the chief made it clear that the kid had zero choice. Giving in, our hero clicked his pen, muttering sourly that he was only doing this for the sake of the children. The uncle mentioned he had already set up his personal bank account and added that the academy was fully sponsored, so High J would be a member of their guild. He then completely stunned our hero by revealing he had assigned a rock-bottom minimum salary since he would not do active hunts. Chuckling, Hong Shukgong added that, during his 3-month probationary period, the rookie teacher would receive 90% of his pay. He also warned that they occasionally train kids even on their days off, leaving our hero seething in silence as he realized he got totally scammed. 2 days later, the young man was cruising down the highway with the director, who kept saying that the sword High J held was incredibly cool, noting the blade sent plenty to the hospital back in the day, but our hero replied it belonged to an old acquaintance. High J felt the blade actively hated him, but deep down he knew Yuji Young had personally gifted it before her tragic death. While driving, Hong Shukgong teasingly asked if our hero was still mad that Seok-young still had not returned his weapon, but he calmly explained that was not the case, since the mana limiter made it completely useless to him anyway. And yet, Seok-young did not believe him at all. He firmly declared that swords were banned on school grounds. He realized the older man just did not want a lethal weapon anywhere near the children. Seok-young then jokingly called him a gloomy pessimist, while he silently let out a sigh of relief, staring ahead. Suddenly, the young man's face tightened, as if something had caught his eye. He spoke up to ask if they were heading the right way, since he remembered the school being deep inside the city limits, not out in the middle of nowhere. Seok-young explained that since there were several active dungeons nearby, constructing any normal residential houses in this zone was strictly forbidden. He believed it was the ideal place for training the next generation of hunters. With that, he parked and killed the engine. Stepping out of the car, he asked if this rundown place was actually the school. Seok-young admitted it looked pretty rough. He felt utterly baffled since there was nothing in sight, but the veteran promised they would build new facilities by next year. A completely deadpan, he asked if he was really supposed to teach kids here for a full year. The older man cheerfully said that you have to start somewhere. He kept on grinning, tightly clenching his fist while dreaming of his massive plans for the school. Soon, Seok-young led the young instructor inside, presenting him to the classroom of kids. By announcing he would teach them the art of runes, he then asked the students to go easy on him, knowing a few already knew him right away. Hanwook shot his hand into the air. The eager student asked if they would only study basic mana-hiding characters or learn the brand new ones too. He replied that they would definitely cover undiscovered runes, pointing out that they would be incredibly useful for the two of them, so they better not sleep. During his lectures, the kid hesitated, but Hanwook quickly asked if he really wanted to miss out on rune secrets, leaving the student absolutely thrilled. Then, a girl sitting way in the back asked if his classes were only for mages. He explained that although only 2 students currently knew how to write runic symbols, his classes were open to anyone. Next, an excited boy raised his hand, asking how the teacher felt after the recent incident. The class admitted they had been incredibly worried because he vanished so quickly without a word. Each student added their own worried thought, looking anxiously at their new teacher, who froze up for a second. In his head, he dismissed them as naive ducklings, far from the hardened hunters they would eventually become in 20 years. He was certain that the person who got wounded by a squad member in that dangerous dungeon was hiding right here among these innocent-looking students. Glancing away, his expression tightened with sudden tension, as if he spotted something highly unusual. His gaze slowly locked onto Park Seo-hyun, and Hee's inner instincts warned him that something major had occurred while they were separated. Judging by her bizarre behavior, flashback to April 5th inside the Myeongdong dungeon, where one of the young students asked Seo-hyun to check the rune he just drew. Classmates suggested that one of the lines needed to be shorter, which the nerd confirmed. She was totally right. The boy noticed she drew symbols like second nature, and she explained that her grandfather taught her the technique in early childhood. The beautiful Park Seo-hyun promised to sketch the rune for Lee Seong-yeon. Her companion requested she place it directly on Oh Hanwok's forehead. She also begged him not to overwork the guy. They might desperately need his shield. Later on, her grandfather always warned her never to look up, or else she would stumble. She suddenly recalled when Lee Seong-yeon's magic rune failed. Close friend once warned her that excessive pride rarely ends well, and hammered those words into her mind. Deeply stressed, Park Seo-hyun was biting her thumb hard. Blood was already flowing from the tiny raw wound. In the year 2044, a young woman stood in the ability management agency, laughing hysterically. 2 shocked bystanders decided to slip away quietly to avoid her mad gaze. Suddenly, a burly powerhouse entered the office, casually scratching his stomach. He asked what Park Seo-hyun was doing here. The disheveled girl greeted Oh Hanwok, and he asked if she was waiting for Director Han. The beauty replied that she was not. Meanwhile, a highly annoyed man behind her desperately tried to squeeze past. This stranger grumbled that he never invited them just because he was lonely. The giant Oh Hanwok demanded to know who he was. It was Woo Hee, an advisor from the Strategic Planning and Raid Coordination Department. He added that his main duty was to do everything to assess dungeon safety, supervise hunters, and guarantee their basic survival. Still, Oh Hanwok had absolutely no idea what this eccentric guy was talking about. Smiling, Woo Hee mentioned he worked at headquarters. Seok-yeon told him to stop whining about his cheap apartment. But our hero laughed, glad he did not have to sleep on the cold streets. Slowly closing the creaking door, the director offered his usual warm smile and wished him a good night. Back in his youth, a gloomy Woo Hee could never understand why he was forced to study such useless garbage. Now, using a digital tablet to review the classified files, he pondered over his mounting problems. But here's the thing, now he knew the legendary hunter was absolutely right about embracing technology. First, he decided to look into the mysterious group whose dangerous members were desperately plotting to capture Park Seo-hyun. Our sharp hero scrolled through the database, searching for vital clues. He entered the initials of a legendary witch who was widely known across the magical underworld. He already knew exactly who she was, but he wanted to understand what painful event had broken her so deeply. Glancing at a specific line on the digital screen, his heart dropped. He froze, completely thrown off balance. Flashing warnings popped up for violating site regulations, which left him utterly stunned. He read that the girl absolutely despised sweet compliments, and Woo Hee wondered if that was why she smiled so creepily. When he cheered, the database warned that if she ever stopped smiling, his absolute last resort was to drop the name Oh Hanwok. The anxious investigator could not comprehend what her issue was, since everyone had actually survived the Myeongdong incident. He tried to calm down. He brushed the heavy thoughts aside, choosing not to take it to heart. The process of registering Hong Zayong began under his sharp, silent gaze. Data regarding the Poo Research Center instantly flashed across the glowing screen. The next morning, the hero was annoyed when Liangyi woke him up early. Dragging him to the clearing, Liangyi left him waiting there for hours. Cam Hai-jae realized this place was as empty as his ruined future. Just then, a student walked up, triggering a brilliant idea in his mind. He could leverage his memories of the future to make a fortune and survive. Rebuilding this nightmare of a town was out of the question for him. The sudden plan felt promising, then Lee Sunyoung broke the silence. He called to Mr. Wu, who sat frozen and completely lost in thought. The boy asked what had made his mentor look so pale and shaken. Stunned, the teacher asked if the young Lee was truly the boy standing in front of him. The kid beamed with admiration, asking if his mentor actually remembered him. He eagerly asked about the sword, saying his aunt was deeply interested in it. Though trying to stay polite, the young man could not help but sound proud. His aunt was a famous huntress, a name that commanded massive respect. The teacher realized the boy meant the youngest daughter of the Dion group. She was Guildmaster Lee Missen, an incredibly powerful and legendary figure. In his timeline, she absolutely adored Shang Yun, which meant a massive fortune lay ahead. But before he could capitalize on it, Hong Xiang called the teacher. The timing was awful, instantly ruining an incredible opportunity for him. Stepping inside, Cam Hai-jae asked if something happened, but the man smiled warmly. He explained that they had secured an old storage room for his classes. Although he promised to tidy the space up, he let out a dissatisfied sigh. Turning to his highly attentive colleague, Cam Hai-jae spoke up with deep concern. He mentioned that something seemed deeply wrong with Park So-hun lately. The director did not understand, prompting the hero to note her sickly appearance. The man nodded slowly, admitting her style had indeed shifted very drastically. With a smile, the director noted that every hunter faces a moral struggle. Grimacing, Cam Hai-jae looked away in silence, his pale face tight. The director asked if he was simply stressed about his upcoming lessons. But the hero knew Hong Xiang was far too arrogant to suffer like this. Neither mental nor physical struggles could ever touch a beast like him. He had absolutely no grasp of the vulnerabilities that normal humans face daily. To him, failing to stand back up after a fall was pathetic. Ever since a French archmage discovered the rune to conceal mana, everything changed. Sorcerers studied it obsessively, and soon, every hunter learned the drawing technique. During class, the instructor explained how to map the flow of life force. The principal and the other students sat quietly, deciding to just watch from the entrance. They sat quietly, knowing they could never actually manifest these complex runes. Still, the polite instructor wanted to test their actual capabilities. He acknowledged their basic knowledge, but needed to see their real skill. Standing over Chu Jin, Hei noted he made the same error repeatedly. Though the tearful boy whined, claiming it was just a minor slip. Haji asked if the boy could guess why ancient runes were barely used back then. The boy replied that standard magic was more convenient, making the teacher realize that his question was far too difficult for an absolute beginner. After all, it had been less than a year since his awakening. Suddenly, his attention shifted over to Park So-hun, who was acting strangely, viciously chewing on her pencil, prompting him to ask the girl why active hunters almost never use sacred symbols during their dangerous missions. Slightly anxious, Haji realized this issue was clearly not just some simple matter of style, and that she was losing her mind. Still, So-hun suggested the characters were easily erased, which the mentor confirmed before asking how they could possibly solve a problem like that. Haji reminded her he was absolutely no magician, so there was no point asking him how it worked, yet he still told her to memorize his exact words. His lecture touched on durability and water resistance, accuracy, amplification, and resonance. The stunned student asked if the teacher seriously expected them to memorize all of this. The young mentor gently explained that with this exact combination, their runes would grow stronger and never fade away. Instead, the anxious Park So-hun decided to step forward and ask a direct question, asking in a trembling voice why their mentor had not told them about this back in Yeongdong. She believed it was completely useless to study combinations for active defense if a person was not even able to draw basic shapes correctly. Still, in Haji's original timeline, she still managed to become an archmage despite her deep trauma, so he did not need to worry about her. With a sweet smile, the excited girl announced she had drawn another rune and asked her teacher to check if it was correct. When he stayed completely silent, she panicked, asking if she had Failed again, which was her absolute biggest fear, fighting back a flood of tears. Sohun frantically repeated in her mind that she must not fail because she was. Terrified of failure, seeing her tremble, Haji thought that he was not responsible, but as the adult here, he had to take action. Responsibility. Clapping his hands, the young mentor cheerfully announced lunchtime and told everyone to eat properly. Soon, after heading down to the dining hall, Haji slowly began eating his rice, quietly telling himself that he really should not have listened to that stubborn old man. Now he was stuck eating a defrosted lunch while sitting inside a giant metal room. Suddenly, Hong asked if Haji had designed the runes himself, since he clearly possessed incredible knowledge, placing a hand on his chest. And feeling quite annoyed inside, the young man asked if they could change the subject. Instead, he claimed they were created by an old acquaintance of his, and the director remembered that the young man was not actually a magician, yet his knowledge was highly impressive. Still, Haji felt that the old director was not very well informed about reality and considered sharing some of his secrets. The calm Haji noted that losing such ancient lore would be a complete tragedy. But he could never imagine actually teaching this to young children. The director realized he had gone just a little too far with his intense curiosity, suggesting that they simply drop the subject. Haji then asked if the kids were being taught under a special program designed by the two active mages, and Hong replied that they merely used basic magic books for their lessons. Meanwhile, Park Sohun was already quite experienced, having studied under her. Jin's grandfather struggled to train him because the boy possessed zero natural talent. Without raw gifts, Jin needed a real teacher. The director started searching. He looked toward the hero, who quickly reminded him he was no magician. The director apologized, claiming he only wanted to clarify the information. But the young man decided to personally teach the kids everything himself. This unexpected claim completely floored Mr. Hong Xiaoyuan, leaving him speechless. His mouth fell open. The strict Hij insisted on one condition in return. They had to make the rune details publicly available for anyone to use. The anxious director wondered if this was legal under the Panju development rules. The young man simply requested that his counterpart receive full credit there. He expected the youngster would only show the students a few basic symbols. Then he asked about the true value of the hidden rune itself. The teacher explained that without proper training, they would not survive long. Assessing the boys' preparation, he realized they lacked essential combat readiness. In his own past timeline, most of those students had indeed died. The chief magician inquired if the creator permitted teaching the runes to others. The young man assured him that the inventor would be absolutely overjoyed. That selfless magician from France always shared his discoveries without charging anything. His ultimate goal was simply to save innocent people from a terrible death. Then the young man added a final condition, mentioning a specific hidden place. He wanted Hong to visit a shelter where many orphaned children lived. Thanks to his future self stepping in, little Hij would be saved early. The next day, the cheerful hunter praised their attack, though it ended poorly. But right at the end, the young student completely lost his balance. He dropped his guard for a split second and missed a vital blow. Sent sliding onto his back, the angry kid refused to suffer defeat again. He instantly scrambled to his feet and charged back into the clash. Both boys tried to flank Director Sakin, but neither got any results. Without even looking, the agile director easily parried them with a stick. Laughing loudly, the man called them sissies and dared them to attack. But they were both completely exhausted, unable to fight any further. Hij watched the spectacle, chuckling quietly at the director's tired boys. Meanwhile, the nervous Choi Jen slipped up and made another glaring mistake. Our hero knew these boys were at an age of pure, overflowing energy. The teacher asked if Park Sohan was following the drawing sequence properly. The anxious girl shook her head, holding back tears as she answered. She promised to show her drawing once she was sure it was perfect. The mentor tried to calm her down, assuring her he was there to help. But his words failed, leaving him tense as he tried to reassure her. He just wanted to verify that Park memorized the correct rune sequence. Going quiet, he reminded himself that young students always need gentle praise. Otherwise, the young students might completely withdraw into themselves. At the same time, the young man remembered his past at the agency. They used to mock him, saying weak hunters were just pieced together. Rubbing his forehead, the young man knew that harsh method wouldn't work. The organization simply was not used to his style. Meanwhile, the noisy director, who managed the training, barked out that his elite students could handle anything, urging them to move a lot faster. The young teacher watched in silence, recalling how his adoptive father, Hong, once asked if he really placed second. Back then, the old man had been absolutely thrilled and completely convinced that he never had to worry about his boy, who always brought home perfect scores, but then he had asked why the kid looked so downcast. Despite doing so incredibly well on his exams, with a warm smile, he teased at the boy. Just wanted to be first, promising he would always be proud of him regardless. Eventually, the father realized that Hija actually wanted to attend university, which explained his disappointment. Dissatisfied, and just like that, the young mentor stood right before his students, giving them total freedom to work exactly how they wanted. Flash of a smile. And he mentioned that many powerful mages he knew were incredibly stubborn kids, proving that real geniuses simply hate being micromanaged. But in response, nobody said a single word, leaving the mentor in a rather awkward silence. Break out a sweat, he quietly wondered if he had made a mistake, because the room had suddenly become incredibly heavy and stiff for some reason. Then he noticed Park So-hyun silently sobbing, quietly wiping away her tears. Shaking, the student held up her sketch and softly asked him to evaluate it. Trying to ease the tension, he assured her she could draw whatever she wanted. The flustered girl tearfully apologized, but the young mentor gently told her to take all the time she needed. Still holding up her drawing, Park stared blankly at the floor and suddenly confessed that she had messed up. Hija turned pale with surprise, unable to believe she was taking it so hard, but he kept his cool and ended the session. The quiet Shujin thanked him, while the tearful girl silently packed her things and left. The young teacher had no clue what just happened, highly doubting his simple speech was that inspiring. Letting out a deep, tired sigh, he just could not grasp his mistake. Later that evening, Liang Yan stepped into an expensive car, the door held open by a respectful subordinate who addressed him formally as the young master. Meanwhile, the young students politely bowed to their principal, bidding him farewell and wishing him a very safe trip. Hija asked where they were heading, and the administrator explained that they all stayed in a nearby shared dormitory. He then quietly mentioned a very troubling trend that had been rising lately in local kidnappings, specifically targeting young awakened individuals who possessed special abilities. Yet bystander accounts showed most people simply turned a blind eye to it. Adopting a very serious tone, he asked if that suspicious location Hija mentioned, housing all those captive children, was actually the notorious Panju Research Center. Hija asked if he was absolutely certain those kids had been taken by force. Hija made a bold deal. Hong Zuk-goyuang had to rescue the helpless kids from the illegal facility while he joined the raid. Staring back with completely flat eyes, the strict director asked the kid if he was biting off more than he could chew. The smug young teacher countered, asking if he seriously wanted to pass up raiding the nation's top research facility. The director coldly replied that his specialized strike force had plenty of members, but they lacked anyone capable of bypassing the complex security, the daredevil assured him. Hija admitted he desperately wanted to find a certain worried about kid, but was playing the selfless hero really the right move for him? Sacrificing his life for innocent children just felt a bit too dramatic. The uncle didn't object, admitting they needed someone who knew the lab. The director insisted they only recruit the absolute best of the best. With young lives at stake, even a tiny mistake is completely unforgivable. Later, he just stood admiring the clear blue sky, completely lost in thought. He noticed Park So-hyun looking gloomy, while Cho Jin-woo daydreamed. Suddenly, the admiring Liang Yun approached him with a bright smile. The boy thanked him deeply, then introduced his shy friend, Sun Jin. Hija greeted Sun Jin and politely asked if they had classes right now. The curious boy asked why the other children never got recess breaks. The mentor explained they had decided to cut down on break times. The youngster joked that maybe magicians just love sitting still forever. Hija laughed, asking if he was a swordsman, which the boy eagerly confirmed. He then asked where Hija's trusted sword was, wondering why he was unarmed. Hija explained the principle strictly forbade weapons on the school grounds. He suddenly realized something wild. A younger version of himself was right here. This meant Yuji-in's second sword had to be somewhere nearby. Wait till you see who steps out. A flashy yellow car screeched to a halt. The door swung open, and out stepped a woman in ridiculously high heels. She looked quite pretentious. The director rushed over to greet his guest. The stunned mentor couldn't figure out why she had suddenly shown up. The arrogant archmage Kim Chaman adjusted her glasses with a light sigh. She complained she would have driven something else on these terrible roads. Hija was utterly speechless. This had never happened in his past. It should be impossible, yet she came to address Hong Zukgoiwang's offer. She thanked Hong Zukgoiwang, but claimed she could only teach basic mana. Her magic required high compatibility, making it way too complex for them. She doubted the students could handle it, then spotted Park So-hyun. Kim Chaman asked if she was really the great-granddaughter of that legend. The dissatisfied beauty quickly reminded him. He had mentioned the hull, and he simply smiled and pointed somewhere. Stunned, Kim Chaman instantly recognized Hija from that roof. Before they took him away, the polite young man bowed and introduced himself. He introduced himself as a simple teacher of these young magicians. Kim Chaman was stunned, unable to believe he was a magician. She clearly remembered seeing him carrying a massive sword in Myeongdong. The sarcastic director laughed, saying Hija knew something that was much better. Intrigued, she asked if he meant a special kind of magic. Hija could not believe he actually got to meet Kim Chaman in person. He felt incredibly grateful, but the excited girl spoke up with a grin. She claimed that since Hija and Hong Zukgoiwang weren't wizards, they couldn't understand. Hija assumed the beauty dismissed runes as complete nonsense, smiling quietly. It would be quicker to just show her. Outside, teacher Wu says Choi Jinwoo needs to make one of the rune lines longer, warning her not to let bad drawing habits form. Shai Park So-hyun is actually drawing much faster now. Still, just as teacher Wu pointed out earlier, she must draw lines with more confidence. Stressed Kim Ki-min cannot believe this complex sketch is really a rune, but teacher Wu suggests testing. The final draft, placing the sheet of paper on the floor, the student rests his hand over the symbols, triggering an instant reaction. Out of nowhere, an intense flame bursts to life, terrifying the elite archmage who did not expect such raw power. Park So-hyun then holds the rune, staying absolutely calm and completely focused. Suddenly, two distinct elements merge together seamlessly, which looks absolutely stunning, completely mesmerizing the young spectator, speechless with shock. Kim Ki-min is finally convinced this is real magic. Annoyed, she demands to know why she cannot feel any mana, asking how they managed to do it. Laughing, teacher Wu is proud. Even an archmage could not sense any energy. The teacher explains that this is the magic of the mana-concealing rune. Fascinated, Kim Ki-min starts studying the symbols, closely examining the overlapping lines that alter their entire meaning. Clutching the paper tight, a slightly devious smile creeps onto her face, as she practically demands that teacher Wu accept a new student. Grabbing a shocked Hong Seok-young by the collar, she asks if she can really learn this incredible rune. Kim Ki-min eagerly begs to join the lessons too, and the thrilled director asks if that is truly possible. But then the archmage suggests that teacher Wu can just draw the runes directly for her. Surprisingly, he does not refuse, shocking Choi Jinwoo. Flashing a sweet smile, the gorgeous archmage happily says she will be under his expert care from now on. But wait, this is no celebration. Holding back tears, Choi Jinwoo reluctantly turns away. He simply has no choice. A few days later, the trio approaches a massive facility, crawling with heavily armed people who move like seasoned professional hunters. Alert. Hong Seok-young notes these are highly trusted operatives who take their duties very seriously. He plans for his men to block the escape routes while they secure critical intel, confirming if the missing children are actually locked inside. A very confused Hee asks if that means they must handle everything themselves. Hong Seok-young simply chuckles. Get ready, this is pure, unplanned improvisation. Suddenly, a scout reports that his detection skills are picking up absolutely nothing. Even stranger, there are 0 surveillance cameras outside. Watching closely, teacher feels a sudden wave of dread. This is impossible, he mutters quietly. He tells his team they need to move inside, leaving Hong Seok-young slightly confused by this move, but with one powerful swing of his sword, teacher Wu shatters the heavy steel chains, rendering them completely useless. The panicked director yells to stop, warning him about the monolith security system. But nothing is stopping this guy. Teacher Wu explains that specialized research facilities require highly sterile conditions to keep any outside elements from intruding. Walking right up to the security keypad, Teacher Wu starts entering numbers in rapid succession while his confused ally watches from right behind him. Oddly, his fingers keep hitting 6 and 9, with every key press making a loud beep. A quick beep and the authorization is finally complete, the boss admits. He could have shared the code sooner, but Hijay wanted to keep his secrets. With a smirk, Hijay reaches out and selects a floor on the panel. Seeing him choose the 5th floor, the older gentleman remarks on the height. But the young man shakes his head, explaining it is actually the opposite. They are heading deep down to the 5th basement, a mysterious level. The doors slide open to reveal a completely empty, unsettling hallway. It is alarming since the enemy should not have known their plans. Hij explains that the facility must have triggered an emergency evacuation protocol. By leaving, they prepared for an invasion under the secret Pompey project. The enemy placed active magic runes in hidden spots throughout the area. If any foreign magical forces are detected, the entire base will detonate. Judging by the pristine floors, their opponents must have fled very recently. They are likely regrouping nearby after using this facility for over 2 years. Hijay wonders what could have driven them to escape in such a hurry. They fled in the dead of night, and Kimchin notices a locked door. The clever young man explains that this is the main research laboratory. It cannot be bypassed. The brave fighter is certain of what lies inside. The most crucial research documents must be locked behind those doors. Stepping forward, the bold hero admits he expected nothing less from them. But his rivals cleaned the place out, leaving only children's toys behind. The abandoned playthings sit scattered on the floor, slowly gathering thick dust. Mr. Hong cautiously asks if any traps will trigger if they destroy things. Hijay reassures him that everything is fine, but watch what he does next. Suddenly, the young warrior smashes his fist into the glass with immense force. Sharp shards scatter across the room, leaving the massive panoramic window heavily shattered. This reckless move terrifies Kimchin, while the cool-headed Hijay stays calm. Looking around, Hijay remembers growing up as an orphan in this very place. This grand facility is just as imposing as he remembers it, long ago. At the Pooh Research Center, a young boy asked his friend a question. The little boy replied that he was keeping a diary for his lawyer father. He needed to collect important evidence. Back then, the young hero requested that they write down that the lab director beat all the children. Even if it was a lie, the director did kick the workers. Agreeing to help, his friend grabbed a blue pencil and began scribbling. In the present, a gorgeous, dissatisfied blonde woman looks around. Her long earrings jingle with every step. This is Dion's guild master. The boss's youngest daughter, and Li Xingyun's aunt, speaks up sharply. She asks if they are wasting their time. Hijay notices her cold gaze. She looks exactly as she does in the future. Hong Shukgong answers. It is still a research lab, so they should look for valuable records. She agrees but reminds them that they promised her something much bigger. Just then, a nearby subordinate reports some highly encouraging news. They successfully disarmed all active explosive devices, earning the beautiful leader's praise. With a subtle smile, she notes that Hijay remains as mysterious as always. She was absolutely sure he was hiding something. Looking closely at the smirking man, she decided to demand answers, while Hij and Kim Shaman stood. Silently behind her, with a cold gaze, Hong Zukgoyong stared. At the expressionless young man, Lee Mason let out a heavy, tense sigh as if she was annoyed by the situation. She ordered her men to sweep the inside for anything important, wanting a private word with him. The polite chief stepped forward, asking if she had finished with the distribution. She gave a quick nod and handed over the documents. The anxious guildmaster recalled saying that there was nothing left inside, but the chief insisted that they found nothing from the lab workers. Passing the stack of papers over, the hunter noted they belonged to the kidnapped child, and then a shocking revelation. The kid was actually the younger brother of their teacher, a total curveball. The cautious blonde was skeptical at first, but she quickly began to scrutinize the documents, tapping her finger against the page she read. Every single word absorbing the true meaning of the text. In one letter from April 5th, the kid wrote that the Mongdong Underground was a failure and he couldn't see the connection, feeling incredibly anxious. Limson couldn't make sense of the nonsense on the paper, but the mention of that cave made her blood run cold. The labs had been moved and the kid had heard rumors about a brand new dungeon that appeared in the Songpa district. 2 days later, one student was sitting alone in a clearing, her yellow eyes contrasting with her dark hair. Mentor Hij noticed she wasn't herself and slowly walked over to her too. Check on her, he jokingly asked if she was watching ants, but got a flat, silent rejection. He then asked what she was looking at and she replied that she was looking at nothing. The mentor didn't want to press Sunjin, a girl with a name that was hard to forget, but since the quiet kid had kept to herself, he assumed she had already left or had unfortunately died. The teacher gently asked why she was sitting there all by herself. She murmured that because of her, Liang Yun was fighting alone. She bluntly added that they couldn't beat Hyunuk, even if they fought together. The calm Hij didn't deny that the guy had plenty of potential, even when compared to Park Soo-hyun, but the young teacher knew the others weren't bad either, since everyone was trying their absolute best. Suddenly, Sunjin approached her mentor and asked him to stop watching the training match. At first, he was totally confused, but a second later, the actual meaning hit him and a small grin crept onto his face. The mentor asked who came up with the plan and smiled when he heard it was Sion. It was a solid plan. Meanwhile, the fearless boy darted from side to side, struggling to hold his ground against Hyunuk as he tried to flank his foe. The opponent was caught completely off guard and stumbled back, losing his balance. Sunjin had leaped into the battle, refusing to leave her teammate behind. She delivered a sharp baton strike right in the stomach. Leaping back, the furious fighter glared, realizing he was now facing a 2-on-1. Staring right at him with complete calm, the girl looked her opponent in the eye. Calling his actions shameful, Hyunwook fumed with rage, shouting that this was cheating, so his opponent decided to remind him of their teacher's words. Laughing, Lee Seongyun mentioned that their mentor always warned them that they could never predict what they would face in a dungeon. The confused guy called it unbelievable, so the young man suggested he team up with someone. If he was still so angry, just then a black car suddenly pulled up nearby and a man in a sharp business suit and glasses stepped out. Attentive Hai tried to figure out who had come to visit, while an excited Xiong shouted that it was his aunt. Pushing up her glasses, the stunning blonde Misan asked her nephew how he was doing, teasingly calling him little one. The embarrassed boy begged her not to say that public, and the woman noted that Sunjin had gotten much stronger. Feeling an unexpected rush of warmth in her heart, the shy girl murmured that she had been training a lot lately. Sighing softly, the guildmaster remarked that it was great. She had left them under Hunter Hong's care, wanting the younger ones to follow their lead. She then noticed how much taller Hyunwook had grown and asked if he wanted to join her guild, promising to look after him. Suddenly, her nephew blurted out that Misan was basically an old lady, which embarrassed her completely. Smirking, the woman fired back that this was exactly why Lee Seongyun still did not have a girlfriend, completely silencing him. The blonde started listing his failed attempts at romance, and the flustered young man begged his aunt to stop. The lady added that everyone else in the family found love easily, so something had to be wrong with him, but he claimed he was just following her example. His aunt quickly pointed out she was only single by choice, whereas he was single because he kept getting rejected. The main character had heard that Lee Misan adored her nephew, but he expected them to have a much warmer dynamic. As it turned out, their bond was quite ordinary, leading the young man to wonder if they were truly close. At that moment, Hong Zukyeong opened the door of the small cabin and announced that their guest had brought some food, calling the students to come eat. As the boys went to lunch, the calm man asked Mr. Wu and Miss Kim to join him. Sipping her coffee, the blonde mentioned she had bought the Songpa and Bangidong dungeons, but the government was taking control of them due to the recent disaster in Maundong. She added that because of this, other guilds backed off from bidding, keeping the final price relatively low. The master asked if Bangidong had never received an official evaluation, and Misan replied that due to the breakthrough in Maundong, the rank certification had been delayed. The master noted they needed to head there immediately, asking what Brother Hea had meant when he said that they failed. The young man truly had no clue, so he nervously shook his head. Truth was, he had never recorded it, but he could not share the whole truth with his allies. The next day, the young teacher uncapped his black marker, getting ready to explain the lesson to his students, since they were already used to drawing runes and controlling mana. He noticed Kim Shaman's hand shoot up. HJ politely asks if she has any questions. Meanwhile, Lee Mason watches closely during The lesson thinking to herself that although the master is extremely handsome, she simply cannot trust him at all. The brown-haired girl speaks up, asking how many runes their instructor actually knows. The guildmaster notes that both the girl and the hunter seem completely unbothered. A bit flustered, the teacher asks why she is so interested, and she just wonders if it is not normal to ask about a master's skills. With a smile, Mr. Wu explains he is not some magician with a signed contract. He gently requests they do not call him a professional. Still, Lee Mason remains skeptical, highly suspicious that the rescuers from the Pangu Center described him as someone so good-natured. Suddenly, she flinches, drawing everyone's immediate attention to the room. The shy girl quickly apologizes, explaining that she really did not mean to interrupt, leaving Mr. Wu looking completely confused as the instructor finally decides to announce that today he will teach the students the shadow rune, which is its exact name. Drawing the shadow symbol on the board, he turns. Is it that simple? Easily, but Kim Shaman notes that he seems incredibly proud of himself. Another student asks what the rune actually does, but Mr. Wu wants them to recreating it first instead of explaining. The young teacher speaks with a firmer tone, urges them to begin sketching, and the eager kids stop arguing immediately. Pouring all their focus into the work, the students begin their task. Walking over to Chao Jin, the instructor asks him, "Easy, right?" He agrees this is way easier to draw than the complicated mana concealing rune, and the instructor confirms this in a chilling tone, explaining that they have so many runes ahead, so Chao Jin will not get to practice just one all day. Next, he slowly approaches Park So-hun to personally check her progress while the guild leaders watch from the sidelines. The master praises her excellent work, asking Park So-hun to activate the shadow rune to test it out. Watching this, Lee Mason completely freezes up. She is totally stunned. Her vision blurs instantly, yet the master simply smiles like nothing happened. He calmly explains that the shadow symbol allows the user to melt seamlessly into the dark, even if it is not very useful during the bright, sunny daylight. But in darkness, the results are incredible, shocking Park So-hun. The instructor gently asks the girl if she can wield this power right now, but she nervously hesitates, admitting she has no idea. Mr. Wu quickly assures her he has absolutely zero intention of pressuring her into doing anything. Promising they can find out today with no stress, he continues, muttering warm reassurance, but the guildmaster suddenly cuts in with a question. The blonde leader speaks up. She asks about the concealment rune. She wants to know much more, and the unbothered young man immediately begins his detailed explanation by explaining that the name itself already reveals the rune's true essence. He mentions using its power to save the trapped students in Maundong, leaving a completely shocked Lee Mason to admit she has never even heard of it. The guildmaster notes that Hong and Kim quickly changed the topic, avoiding any details. She worried Sinyang might suffer severe mental trauma. Slowly turning her head to the left, the woman glares coldly and directly at director Sakyoyuang, who looks utterly confused, before grabbing him fiercely by his collar and pulling him close. She asked if that scoundrel had actually silenced her nephew and started questioning him. The Kim family was legendary, producing elite archmages with the same rare abilities for 3 generations. Such a lineage of magic was incredibly rare, even on an international scale. Even though her family lacked actual combat experience, the girl's reputation was flawless. Director Hong then asked if Wu Hiyi understood what they were discussing. Wu Hiyi simply asked how any of this connected to what had recently occurred. He admitted he couldn't grasp the point of their conversation, leaving his companion momentarily confused. This meant the hero's rune was exactly what the prestigious archmage had been searching for. With this discovery, the powerful mages and people of Pu would surely come hunting for him. To avoid trouble, Wu Hiyi advised the director to take a simpler route. He suggested just assigning all the credit to Kim Ki-min and calling it a day. But things were not that simple, and a stern Hong Seok-young shut that idea down. He insisted that a person cannot live without integrity, but Wu Hiyi remained completely clueless. The director added that this legendary achievement belonged solely to the brave sorcerer. Yet the young man truly could not see what the big deal was. Hong Seok-young asked if he seriously believed he had managed to silence the students. Wu Hiyi responded with genuine curiosity, asking if that wasn't exactly what happened. The older hunter explained that even the kids knew this was a monumental moment. His master runes would be permanently engraved in history, which deeply impressed him. He promised to ensure Wu Hiyi's name ended up in future magic textbooks. This left the young man wondering what kind of position that put him in. He realized he was essentially taking credit for the French archmage's work. Recalling Park So-hyen's shadow rune, he also remembered the other wizards. The massive sum of money those corrupt bastards pocketed also deeply troubled him. They had grabbed the cash without a single shred of hesitation. Wu Hiyi clutched his head, staring at the floor in deep thought while the director watched. The French mages in Park So-hyen only ever wanted to save as many lives as possible. But as for the others, he wondered exactly how much the management agency paid them. With payouts that massive, they could easily buy brand new equipment for their hunters. That way, the guild wouldn't have to constantly beg Mason for financial donations. Suddenly beaming with joy, the young man readily agreed to the director's request. This sudden shift in emotion left Hong Xiaokyung feeling slightly puzzled. The director invited his companion to grab some lunch, but a bizarre sight awaited them outside. They stepped outside to find a massive crowd busy with random tasks. Dumbfounded, the director rubbed his neck, completely bewildered by the sudden chaos. Relaxing on a deck chair, a blonde woman casually asked if they had eaten yet. Meanwhile, an irritated man nearby barked that this was sacred school territory. She smirked, warning him that calling this place a school could get him reported. The harsh sun here was terrible for Seonjin's delicate skin, she complained. Nearby, Lee Seungyeon nervously wondered what his aunt would say if she saw them. Seeing her beloved nephew's sparkling eyes, the woman paused briefly to gather her thoughts. The gorgeous woman then caught him off guard by asking if he was friends with the quiet girl. Meanwhile, the guildmaster's subordinates kept unloading heavy boxes from the vehicles. They carefully followed her precise instructions as she asked if this was the final delivery. Watching from a safe distance, Wu Hiyi quietly observed the chaos unfold. Wondering where Lee Mason got all this gear, a confident blonde suddenly approached. She gave him a gentle nudge, mentioning that the subspace had finally been established. Although the director hadn't introduced this term yet, it was their company's own development. That made her the first to use it. The gorgeous woman asked if the mentor needed any help, but he politely declined and thanked her. Still, the cunning hero already secured an item for the subspace, locked and ready, knowing that besides, it would be invented by Dashin in the future anyway. Eventually, the girl reached out. Her delicate hand, introducing herself formally since they hadn't properly met yet. She explained that she was a guild master, currently helping the hunter Hong Kun. Managing a massive workload for him, she giggled and whispered a sweet promise. They also planned to support Mr. Wu from now on, smiling back the young man said he looked forward to it, celebrating inwardly at this major connection. Having the faction leader speak directly to him was a massive win. Sometime later, the young teacher sat in his room, quietly drawing characters on paper, the curious Lee Xiang Yan entered the room alongside Seung Seong Jin, who immediately asked a question. He wanted to know if the mentor's main weapon was truly a sword. The young hero knew that using a spear would make the kids notice his familiar techniques. They would realize his moves matched the director's. The eager boy asked for lessons. But the hero reminded him they already had Korea's top hunter at their disposal. The boy argued that the director used a totally different weapon. Because of that, they wouldn't learn a single thing. He added that they were sent to train with Hiji instead, since the director was always skipping school. That was definitely not great news for the young fighter. A bit later, the hero stood face to face with a cheerful Hong, who had news to share. The gentleman explained that since they had more teachers now, his constant presence wasn't required anymore. The hunter added that they had to keep this quiet. No one else could know until they officially revealed the rune to the public. It turned out Lee M wouldn't share her staff, and since they were outsiders, the critical task could only be handed over to Haya. The hero asked what made the director think he was actually the right person for the job. His companion replied that he could clearly see the determination in his eyes. Smiling, the gentleman noted that a person's eyes are the mirror of the soul. The director banned the use of mana, asking him to just correct their stances. But the young man still couldn't fathom how this guy became the absolute strongest. He casually suggested that the hero could just spar with the kids instead. Sparring would teach them a lesson, especially if they got beat up a little. The man mentioned he already gave the students a heads up about the training. He warned that they would soon be out for his blood, which sounded bizarre. As it turned out, the headmaster offered the boys a special reward as incentive. All they had to do was land a single hit on the teacher's forehead. An awkward silence filled the room as the two comrades just stared at each other. The principal added that Haeun was left in the care of Miss Kim. Since mages and healers share similarities, she wanted to take on the responsibility. Fastening his beige bag, the gentleman announced his departure. The teacher asked where. The hunter calmly replied that he wanted to inspect the Songpo district dungeons. And the young man begged to be taken along. A smiling Hong Seok-young replied that nobody knew what Panja would do, so he needed to check if it was even. Safe inside, he ended the talk by patting the quiet young man on the right shoulder. Silence fell. Woo Hee sighed, entirely defeated. He resigned himself to the cold fact that he could not accompany his friend, so he stopped arguing. The next morning, a massive white truck sat parked near the house loaded up with all kinds of gear. The surprised mentor wondered when the coffee truck would show up but chose not to worry about it. Coughing into his fist, the young teacher sternly ordered his students to remember one critical lesson in this world: the one who survives is the strongest. But I am Ryung Han. Scoffed that it sounded pretty lame coming from a teacher. Keeping his serious face, the veteran hunter asked if any of the kids had ever visited a dungeon. Hearing those words, the children immediately grew nervous and swallowed hard, silently staring at their teacher. Suddenly, a brave student in the crowd raised a hand, casually revealing he had already been inside one. It was the incredibly calm Seo Hanseong, though he clearly hated to recall that terrifying experience. The mentor quickly asked what it was like, but at first the boy could barely find the words. Still, he muttered that it was completely different, and the spellbound kids listened closely. The experienced teacher confirmed there were indeed theories that dungeons are another dimension. Woo Hee silently recalled the stories told by the late Woo Il-rak, who once touched on this exact topic. He claimed the underground has no people, and to survive there, one must cast aside all of their humanity. The mentor advised the kids not to care about who they once were, because inside that cave they must act purely on primal instinct. Next, Woo Hee asked if the principal had banned real spars, which the students quickly confirmed. Gripping his practice sword tightly, the young teacher declared that he would personally train them, using the principal's brutal methods of instruction. Except he was way less gentle, no holding back. With a sharp swing of his blade, he declared that he was going to awaken their latent abilities and told them to give their best. Meanwhile, Hong Seok-young and his elite team approached the D-rank dungeon. In Seoul, Hong Seok-young noted that rumors suggested all these gates would soon be reevaluated, and Lee Myseon noted that the other hunters should have arrived by now. The proud woman believed that many gate ratings were completely wrong, prompting her companion to dryly ask if she was clean. The self-confident lady smirked, replying she had no need to cheat to get rich. Relishing her proud moment, she demanded an apology from her companion, who quickly apologized with heavy sarcasm. Closing her gear box, the woman stared straight ahead, spotting something interesting, with Lee Myseon leading. At A rank, Jai Yujin at B rank, Kang Ti-woo and Choi Jinwoo at C class, and legendary Hong Seok-young, the squad entered. At around 1 p.m. they stepped through the portal into a world of green grass and clear blue skies. The woman asked the guide for his thoughts, but he sheepishly confessed that he was deeply embarrassed. This peaceful zone was definitely D rank, since even a basic C rank would never be this quiet. Tensing up, Hong Seok-young asked if they had any info on monsters, and his comrade behind him gave a firm nod. The young man explained that while insects lived in this forest, there were so few of them, there was absolutely no need to worry. When asked about their diet, the youth replied that they were rare herbivores. These creatures only ate leaves and showed zero interest in meat or blood, but they still watched the humans without ever attacking them. He then added that the core of the dungeon sat completely unguarded right in the middle of the forest, and Hong Seok-young noticed that the group was being highly cautious. The veteran hunter began to realize that while all these D-rank monsters seemed peaceful, the whole situation felt incredibly alarming. He wondered why the Ark even cared about this place. If it was really this simple. Suddenly, Lee Mason, who was standing nearby, let out a loud shout. Confused, Hong Seok-young asked the woman who crushed it if she truly hated them that much, learning that she was disgusted by literally anything with more legs than herself. the smug guy began teasing her, dangling the crushed centipede right in front of her face, making her turn pale with absolute terror. Screaming, she demanded that he get that nightmare away from her right now, even drawing her weapon. On the ground, more giant centipedes squirmed around their feet, looking absolutely disgusting and causing instant nausea. Suddenly, their alert commander raised his hand as if he sensed danger nearby. Keeping his focus sharp, the man started to sniff the air, clearly disturbed by the smell. With a dead serious look, he warned that these bugs were ignoring their food for one reason: because something much worse was close by. The blonde girl trembled behind him. While the rest of the group froze in fear, they all slowly began examining the ground where many centipedes still crawled. In a chilling tone, the hunter muttered that these things loved rotten flesh, which sounded incredibly creepy. Later, Hiji tiredly reminded Yuji that he had to write his report, saying that she had already visited the Sampa district dungeon herself. She told him she had to clean out the cave, insisting she was not joking, but Yuji was not going to play along with her. He immediately began pushing her out of the room, telling her he had work to do, while she complained that this was literal physical violence. Totally ignoring her protests, he kept pushing the talkative girl right out of the room. Suddenly, he gasped, sweating with fear. He snapped his eyes wide open, realizing it was all just a dream. Burdened by the nightmare, the young man slowly sat up, wondering what on earth he had just dreamed about. Clutching his blanket, he wondered why Hiji did not just carry out her plans in secret. He could not understand why someone who never listened to him was suddenly waiting for his permission, unable to figure it out. The anxious youth scratched his head and decided to start working. During class, the students begged the teacher to call the principal, but he did not even have his phone number. Looking at the exhausted students lying on the ground, the coach suggested continuing the training since they still had the strength to complain. Looking completely pale, Lai Zongyun apologized to the teacher in a trembling voice, though he did not even know what for. Exhausted, Sunjin admitted that, blinded by the reward, she had only aimed for the teacher doubted they had actually exhausted themselves with the head director. Meanwhile, the whimpering girl claimed that working with the director was not that hard. Suddenly, a sweet girl appeared like an angel, offering the kids cold water. Almost crying with absolute relief, the students eagerly gulped down the wonderful drink. One of them even dumped it straight over his head to cool off. A girl declared the healer saved them, but she just smiled back warmly. She felt awkward resting alone, just as a yellow taxi sped toward them. The cab pulled up and the young girl hopped out, thanking her driver. He had no idea what urgent business she could possibly have here. Still clutching her water cooler, the healer went totally pale from pure shock. She never expected to see her enthusiastic, brown-eyed little sister standing right there. It had been ages since they last saw each other, making the reunion incredible. She admitted she missed her so much, she even begged to leave school. Looking a bit flustered, the healer apologized to teacher Hia for the interruption. She introduced her and gently nudged her little sister to greet everyone properly. Yuji immediately gave a deep, respectful bow to their new teacher. She had heard all about the brave man who saved her older sister. While she thanked him endlessly, Hungwook's mind was still stuck on his dream. The cheerful girl introduced herself as Yuji, absolutely thrilled to meet him. But Hungwook got a bad feeling, remembering how differently she treated him back then. In his past life, she never showed him any respect or true kindness. He asked if she really just came for her sister, but she had other plans. She cut straight to the chase, asking him to accompany her somewhere. She explained that the registry office required a guarantor ranked C or higher. Brimming with sudden confidence, Yuji proudly announced that she had awakened. This revelation sent a massive shockwave of disbelief straight to her sister. She explained that she accidentally tore a soccer ball to shreds during gym. When her sister asked if that was why she got dismissed, Yuji nodded. She was told she had to speak with a senior registry official. Turning to Hungwook, she bluntly asked how he awakened, which stunned teacher Hia. He was completely shocked that she addressed him so politely without insulting him. He calmly replied that his awakening was honestly nothing special at all. Privately, he wondered if her tragic fate in Myeongdong was the trigger. The excited student warned that Yuji would face fines if she delayed registration. The older sister noted she registered much later without facing any punishment. Visvi piped up, explaining that the director had quietly handled it. He took care of her and even helped Hansung secure his compensation. Meanwhile, teacher Hia leaned over and whispered softly to Miss Kim. She urged her to register Yuji, but Miss Kim stammered in shock. She stammered that she was only S rank, but her friends scoffed. She pointed out that the media loves to pry, suggesting a different guarantor. The young man instantly refused, prompting the curious girl to demand answers. The cool-headed hero simply claimed he did not have his phone on him. This lame excuse left the young girl completely dumbfounded by his response. She insisted that since Yuji chose him, he must go. Her completely amazed by his courage, the young girl begged to become his apprentice. Student calling it a massive honor. Shocked, Hija asked why she was even saying this to him, completely caught off guard by her sudden request. The brown-eyed little girl kept begging him for training, while the hero mentally repeated that he needed to stay calm. Her intense devotion only added to his growing inner turmoil, which was directly tied to the deep personal struggles he had to face. Quite unexpectedly, Hija flatly rejected Yuji Young, instantly bringing tears straight to her eyes. The young man explained that he was no magician, so she could not learn anything from him. Instead, he told the girl to return once she finally finished high school, but the stubborn girl had already read online that the true golden age begins exactly 1 month after awakening. It was also vital to purge every last impurity from the body, using magic within the first 3 days, but he just seriously hoped that normal people did not believe that. The excited girl insisted she had seen similar claims, but Madame Kim and Jian's older sister had honestly never heard of such a thing. She then handed her teacher a flyer inviting him to a training program, explaining that she had received it while waiting outside for him earlier that morning. She added that she only kept it because she could not find a single trash can nearby, begging him not to get the wrong idea. After quickly scanning the paper, the calm hero turned back to the girl, who was waiting eagerly to hear even a single word from him. Not wanting to crush her spirits, Hija dismissed it as absolute garbage and told her not to worry, advising her to just wait for the director. Clapping his hands, the mentor turned back to the kids, letting Yuji Young watch the practice session with her sister. The brunette scoffed, saying she would not want to stay once she saw how brutal the classes actually were, but the coach found the whole thing pretty fun. A crying boy whimpered that the teacher was clearly enjoying himself, and he just smiled in response, teasingly reminding them that they were still total weaklings, and that was the problem. Later that night, Hong Zukong told Hija that he only supported Yuji Young and her sibling because he felt deeply sorry for the lonely orphans. The cheerful Kim Chaman chimed in, noting the girl was incredibly bold to instantly ask Hija to take her on as an apprentice. She had honestly never seen the mentor so flustered, since the persistent little girl refused to back down even after witnessing the training. Slamming his fist onto the table, he just snapped at them to stop teasing him and look at the file, but the hunter insisted on speaking first, holding out a tablet with a photo. He explained that a body had been discovered underground in the Songpa district tunnels, asking if Hija recognized the deceased person on the screen. The young man examined it closely, replying calmly that he did not know the dead man was. Suddenly, the hunter revealed it was Kim, who had sacrificed himself so Hija could escape from Pooh. The leader stared with deep suspicion into the young man's eyes, demanding to know who he really was. A few minutes later, a polite waiter delivered the hot fried chicken that a hungry Hija had ordered. Folding his arms across his chest, the serious Hong Zukong calmly asked if the boy had anything to say, but the clever youth, completely refusing to be baited, suggested they drop the act so they would not waste any valuable energy. Puzzled Hunter smirked, replying that he was only getting started, and Hija met him with a sigh and a grin. He asks not to be linked to some random guy, especially since Kim Ki-min is a girl. He is not dumb enough to steal some stranger's identity and just pray that everything somehow works out by pure luck. With mortality rates expected to drop soon, the young man had to plan ahead. He had to use the Kim surname and pick a matching identity carefully. Since the elderly clerk only wrote down the surname, the gender was left blank. One of the possible matches lived abroad, while the other died tragically, trying to seal off the entrance to the Yonggandu underground dungeon. That deceased match was actually a police officer before his hunter awakening. His official files completely vanished due to his deep undercover work. Ultimately, the man never came back, leaving his record completely clean. A perfect ghost identity. Now he sits directly opposite his targets, including Hong Seok-young and Kim Ki-min, who are both waiting eagerly for answers. He gets ready to lay out the entire truth before them. He asks who the man in the photo is and if they spared him just to test his skills. The director found that photo deep inside a dungeon that was supposed to be heavily guarded. But how did it get there? Honestly, not even the director knows. He asks if the director truly needs his help and if this test was set up with Kim's aid. Hearing this, Kim Ki-min snaps, completely confused by their cryptic talk. She demands to know who they are discussing and why gender even matters here. He looks at her, bewildered, and asks if she is secretly drunk. She barks back at him to stop changing the subject. He remains completely calm. He quietly asks if she already knows that he originally came from Panju. She nods and Hong Seok-young points out that while he never said it, only an absolute fool would miss it after his display at the training center. An annoyed Hee knows the old director is stingy, but this is ridiculous. Dragging him all this way without a single word of explanation is highly frustrating. As the realization hits him, Kim Ki-min nods, confirming his suspicions. She then asks if the director will finally stop doubting this guy now. Hong Seok-young calmly agrees, deciding it is time to offer a little peace offering. He reaches into his pocket to hand the young man some well-deserved gifts. He pulls out 3 plastic cards, each featuring Hee's face. The first is a brand new identity card, matching the cover story he gave earlier. It completely clears him, regardless of any lies told during the interrogation. Hong Seok-young also hands him an official hunting license. Even though Hee is currently ranked as a D-class, he can upgrade it soon. Finally, he receives a bankbook and card, and trust me, it is a massive payday. It turns out the director already processed his first official paycheck. He even went ahead and secured a solid insurance policy for the young hunter. The director knows Hee is deeply moved, but tells him to put it away. He claims he does not want to see Hee's overly emotional reaction. Hee sighs, wondering why he needs insurance when he is banned from dungeons. But he decides to push the money issues aside for a moment. The real treasure is that Hong Seok-young went out of his way to do this. Hee mentions that Ha-young told him all about the dark rumors floating around. A man trembled as he read the words on the paper, turning pale with excitement. The gentleman demanded to know what nonsense was written there, but then it hit him. It was all about the PU Research Center. Shaken, the director looked over at Heeja. Heeja calmly explained that the organization was built solely to recruit new members. The director asked why they operated like some cheap, third-rate cult, and the young man replied. He said it was the best way to draw in massive crowds of members quickly. Plus, the employees could scout out perfect test subjects to trigger artificial awakenings. Stunned by this, Hong Seok-young did not understand a single word and demanded answers. He begged for a real explanation, so the calm hero laid out the truth. The syndicate was actually kidnapping children just to increase their supply of test subjects. The horrified director realized that Panju must be a massive, global criminal network. He was not wrong, but there was a crucial detail he was missing. Looking to the side, the director listened closely to the young man who knew everything. 2 years ago, Han's acquaintance was deployed to the United States. But the team assigned to him was wiped out, so he went to retrieve the body. Heeja first heard rumors about this research center on the black market in South America. The deeper he dug into the mystery, the more he uncovered about mass murders. These killings happened in the underground, and there was plenty of other dark stuff. Affected nations conducted their own private investigations into them. It turned out Panju was just one small branch of a much larger beast. Even if they captured researchers, the investigation would not reveal any real names. The investigation was a dead end. Later, Kim Shaman pulled out a device. She showed it to Heeja, asking if he knew what kind of rune this was. Looking closely at the screen, the serious young man admitted he had never seen it. The director could not believe there were actually symbols unknown to someone like him. Heeja countered, asking why he would remember symbols he did not even use. He paused to add a crucial detail as the girl watched him, waiting intently. She kept completely silent, her brown eyes fixed on him in anticipation. With a calm smile, Heeja explained that he could naturally read these mysterious hieroglyphs. By the next day, the charming Kim Chaman opened her car trunk full of food. She called out to the starving students, announcing that lunch was finally served. The terrified kids could not believe their ears and slowly began to crawl forward. Drooling and acting like absolute zombies, they rushed the trunk of the car. Shocked by their wild behavior, the young woman wondered what was wrong with them. Meanwhile, the unflappable Hija asked if she had brought the specific items he requested. She handed over a black bag, prompting the main character to praise her. She smirked, asking if he was actually being serious or just teasing her. Hija held out a notebook covered in runes, asking if she could replicate them. He pulled some marble beef from the bag, noting the drawings were incredibly sloppy. It was clear they were in a rush, which made the symbols useless. The brown-haired girl teased him about failing, but Hija just rolled his eyes. He told her to stop talking nonsense and get to work on the drawing. Nearby, the exhausted students finished their lunch, slowly beginning to calm down. The observant Choi Jenu was chugging water from a bottle when he froze. He suddenly heard Kim Chaman calling out to them, suggesting a better plan. They expected grand tests, but things turned out to be much simpler than that. Haiji asked what his teacher had in mind, astonished by what lay before him. He asked why an unfamiliar rune was drawn on the meat, wanting an explanation. The teacher replied he just had to check something, leaving the boy curious. The bespectacled student wondered if he was trying to create entirely new symbols. Haiji reassured everyone that the lady wanted them to eat, telling them not to worry. He told them to go rest, and the girl quickly agreed with his suggestion. Asked if the sandwiches were tasty, the student praised the director's cooking. Since they were packed with meat, everyone was fully satisfied with them. Haiji asked if the chief had returned, but the woman hesitated to answer. Kim Chaman claimed Hong Zukyoung was busy, though he had actually gone back inside. He went straight back to the dungeon, where Cho Jinu noticed something strange. Jinu asked the teacher if he could smell something weird nearby. The cautious hero agreed in silence, stepping forward to investigate the area. He soon realized those scoundrels used a specialized rune to clear the dungeon. Long ago, before his time travel, Haiji worked as Hong Zukyoung's young assistant. He spent those early years constantly solving the older man's personal problems. Back then, he told the chief he wanted to get his hunting license. Lying lazily on the sofa, Hong Zukyoung looked up in mild surprise. He never expected the studious boy to pursue such a dangerous combat path. Sitting up quickly, he asked if bullies were bothering the young man at school. He even threatened to march right to the principal's office to settle it. Haiji grabbed the remote, explaining that modern civil service jobs were highly competitive. While Hong Zukyoung was ready to offer his own job, Haiji noticed the quick detour. He accused the older man of trying to change the subject too easily. He wanted to know if he could get extra exam points by having a hunting license. Haiji asked if the boss wasn't the most powerful authority in management. But the truth was that the chief had nothing to do with hiring newcomers. Still, he promised to look into it and help his young assistant. He told the boy to aim for the highest possible starting rank first. Haiji stunned his adoptive father by saying he wanted a humble D rank. Hong Zukyoung was completely against it, wanting his son to shoot much higher. Believing his lack of power was from being adopted, Haiji made him sigh. Patting his son on the head, a smiling Hong Zukyoung accepted defeat. Having won this argument, the mood shifted when the hunter turned completely serious. He announced there was someone else alive inside the dangerous, dark dungeon. Besides the corpse, there was someone else breathing inside that cave. Dion told the director they would not investigate, so they just had to wait. All they could do was wait for the results, which deeply worried the boy. The chief then suggested preparing a field trip into the dungeon. Haiji asked if the boss was really planning on going into the dungeon. He knew a B-rank cave would be easy for someone that powerful. But his comrade smirked, stunning the young man with a sudden truth bomb. He revealed that Haiji was the one going, handing over a training plan. The daredevil instantly had some complaints for the director. He should raise his pay if he wanted him working this hard, but the director insisted that. Keeping an academy running was incredibly expensive. Still, Hij pointed out they barely had any. Students snapping his fingers with a grin, the cheerful Hong Shakong added that. They desperately needed to construct a new building, prompting Hij to ask when that would actually happen. Hong explained that since this area was surrounded by deep caves, local builders outright refused to work there unless they got paid a fortune. Hij simply suggested clearing out the nearby dungeons, and his counterpart gestured to their preparation plans, reminding him this was exactly why they needed him. The young hunter wondered if it would just be faster to handle it himself. But Hong quickly shut that idea down, leaning both hands on the table. Hong explained that in the end, they absolutely needed concrete results. After all, he had established this academy using his own reputation, despite critics claiming hunters did not even need education. They only paid attention because he personally backed the school, Hong noted. That they needed visible success. If he or Sis Kim cleared it, the public wouldn't appreciate the effort. Pouring a fresh glass of water, the older man added that the number of newly awakened individuals is climbing every single year. But sudden cave disasters are rising just as fast. Veteran hunters aren't rushing to share their outdated skills. If this school fails to meet these massive expectations, they won't be able to safeguard those who have only recently awakened. Taking a quiet sip of coffee, the director paused as Hidge stared back, surprised. But here is the trick. The director knew a much easier way to handle this, causing the young man with sparkling eyes to ask what it was. According to the director, they could claim they teach exclusive runes native only to their academy, and the young hero readily promised to give it his absolute all. Soon, when the class heard about an upcoming practical test, the students gasped. Principal Hong announced it was time to grade their combat skills, adding that Instructor Wu would accompany them. The young hero told the class they were heading to a C-rank zone, located right behind the campus, adding he would tag along to carefully evaluate them. From this very moment, the trainees needed to form squads to clear the dungeon while mastering 4 crucial facts. Only after they figured out the dungeon rank, native environment, beasts, and core location could they draft a proper plan and organize their teams. The biological ecosystem awaiting them in this cave was highly similar to Earth, though spatial distortions had caused several strange dimensional anomalies. The instructor told them to visualize the various caves they had researched online or personally explored, making a visibly anxious Park So-hyun begin to hesitate. Suddenly, she flashed back to being a tiny toddler, cradled in her grandfather's warm embrace, giggling at everything around her. The kindly old man had smiled broadly as he cradled the tiny infant, leaning down to softly whisper a gentle promise. This gentleman was fully confident that his sweet granddaughter would thrive without him, becoming an incredible mage who would easily outshine him. Those words remained deeply etched in Park So-hyun's mind, making her remember them daily and fear making any mistakes. After wrapping up the basic breakdown of the upcoming trial, the teacher suggested they grab some lunch before starting personal interviews tonight. The experienced instructor advised the students to reflect on their own weaknesses ahead of the practical exam, even if it completely ruined their appetite. Soon, as students slowly trickled out of the classroom, warm sunlight hit their faces. It felt amazing. Clad in a simple tracksuit, Hija noticed So-hyun. She had reluctantly joined the others, quietly sitting on her chair while looking incredibly tense. Walking over, Hija quietly asked the withdrawn girl if she wanted some lunch. Suddenly he froze. Tears were silently streaming down her face. They dripped right onto her notebook. Panicking, Hija asked if his class was that bad. He even offered to call the headmaster. So-hyun wiped her eyes with shaking hands. She tried to speak. Hija leaned in, listening intently. But then she dropped a massive bombshell. She wanted to quit school. Hija stood there speechless, not knowing what to say. So-hyun struggled to explain, confessing that she felt totally useless. She truly believed she lacked the raw talent needed to ever become a magician. Rather than becoming a burden to everyone, she decided it was best to quit. Nursing a growing headache, he asked who put that ridiculous idea in her head. But the heartbroken girl quickly shook her head. No, that wasn't it at all. She believed she could barely cast magic, but Hija quickly disagreed. She actually casts spells much faster than most field agents. Tears were still falling, but she listened to her teacher's comforting words. Then Hija asked if she also thought Chojin was terrible at magic. So-hyun looked shocked, instantly arguing that Chojin had absolutely nothing to do with this. She tearfully pointed out that the boy only awakened less than 6 months ago. But for her, her awakening happened more than 10 long years ago. She even knew a special spell and fully understood the theory behind it. She just couldn't understand how Chojin could call himself a magician. He couldn't even master the simple rules she knew by heart. Her hands shook violently with intense self-hatred, her fists clenching tight. It was heartbreaking. He just softly asked where she learned that special spell. The sudden question caught the young girl completely off guard. She whispered that she learned it before her grandfather passed away. Unsure why he cared, she listened as Hija asked about her grandfather's attribute. She replied that he specialized in guiding magic, using light as his weapon. Hearing this, Hija suddenly flashed a faint, mysterious smile. With a warm grin, he placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. He looked into her eyes and sincerely told her she was incredibly talented. Looking at the wary Sohyan, Hija confidently promised to make her an archmage. Later, Hija went to the principal, reporting that Sohyan wanted to quit. The principal was utterly shocked. Hija explained they had just spoken. Frowning, the older man immediately asked why she would make such a rash decision. Hija replied that she felt completely useless and had zero confidence. Hearing that, the headmaster relaxed and let out a gentle smile. Snapping his chopsticks, he noted she had simply set the bar too high. Her grandfather was a legendary figure who always got straight to the point. He cleared dungeons instantly, though his destructive methods were incredibly dangerous. Hija asked if Hong Shokaio knew him, and the principal nodded. He actually knew his son, who was the father of the beautiful Sohyan. Director Hong explained that the grandfather stepped in right after the father died, and then he retired from the guild to raise his granddaughter. The director could barely put into words how incredibly harsh the old man had been with his son, though he was gentler with young Sohyan. It was the classic tragedy of a demanding father who wanted massive success and a disappointing child who inherited none of his family talent. He desperately wanted to pass on his secret magic to the boy, but sadly, he ended up dying during a highly dangerous dungeon raid, only after losing his only heir. Did No Young regret his harsh parenting, while his granddaughter grew up in quiet peace at their family home, after the passing of the heroic father who saved those civilians during the cave-in. Young Sohyan was taken care of by another guardian until she started school. The calm Hija asked exactly when the grandfather had died, and the director answered that it happened when the girl was 10 years old. Director Hong Seokayang added that the guardian was a lawyer from the No Young Guild, prepared for this exact situation. Since the poor girl had absolutely no other living relatives, Hija asked if it was true that Sohyan had only ever learned magic from her grandfather, and as far as the director knew, that was absolutely true. He asked if something was bothering the young teacher, who suspected that the grandfather had been just as strict with her. It was all too common for magicians to force their children into this dangerous path. Even after already losing one son, Hija quietly asked his colleague to take good care of the young girl, while his companion silently wiped his mouth with a napkin. Staring at the director as he cleared the table, the annoyed teacher asked what kind of response that was. Smiling softly, Director Hong replied that he just knew the young teacher would protect Sohyan anyway, even without being asked. With lunch finally over, the director had one last thing to say before parting. He mentioned that he expected great things from the new homeroom teacher. And a very startled Hija asked why he was suddenly given such heavy responsibility. Smiling warmly, the director said that to everyone else, the young man was a natural leader, so there was no arguing with it. Taking his chance, the bold teacher asked for a raise, but the director instantly changed the subject, reminding him about the class lecture he had to give. The exasperated teacher tried bringing up the money again, but his boss simply turned away and cheerfully wished him good luck. Our confused hero asked if Director Hong, who was now casually whistling and playing dumb, could even hear a word he was saying. Tossing a piece of trash into the bin, the young teacher decided it was best to just drop it and get back to work. Keeping his composure, he headed off to speak with his class, completely ignoring the sly director. Meanwhile, Director Hong watched him go, quite amazed that the young man was so dedicated to protecting these kids instead of standard magicians. Falling to his knees in panic, the nervous man begged Mr. Wu not to do this to him, but the teacher calmly walked away. Inside the classroom, Hija asked Chojin and Sohyan if they had given any serious thought to their next mission. He asked if they actually believed they could survive the dungeon, but the quiet student asked if there was any real reason to worry. Honestly, our hero never expected them to come up with a brilliant strategy in under an hour, so he suggested skipping the topic entirely, leaving the young student completely stunned. He argued that after all the intense Thinking too much was giving him indigestion, but the teacher replied that this was how they would finally realize how useless they actually were. The strict mentor then added that if they had really thought things through, that was actually great because at first every single one of them was completely clueless. He believed a hunter must find every single weakness and figure out how to cover for them. An attentive student asked where they should even begin to avoid making mistakes. Picking up a pure white feather, the young instructor asked if they knew what their elemental magic was. Mages used to be incredibly valuable, but when mana-concealing runes were introduced, their worth plummeted. It was still quite a mystery how they ever adapted. Countless research centers shut down, forcing everyone to find new ways to pass their family's elemental magic down to their own children. Eventually, a French scientist researched how this magic worked and published his findings, helping sorcerers finally identify their true elemental nature. The mages listened and sent him straight to the Academy of Hunters with diverse elements. And this was the very method Hidge chose to follow. Thoughtful Kim Shimon asked if there was any way to discover one's destiny besides just feeling it yourself. The young mentor paused for a moment, wondering how best to explain this. He told them this special method was created by the same wizard who taught him runes, making it completely reliable. The excited brown-haired girl eagerly asked if they could try it out immediately, while other students stared in absolute confusion. First, they had to dissolve some gnome golden powder, then dip the protective swan feathers right into the mixture. The final step was to channel mana through the brush. From the awakened mage looking to find their element, Miss Kim followed the steps precisely, keeping her focus completely locked to avoid any mistakes. Suddenly, gnarled and twisted wooden branches sprouted, shocking the poor girl. Kamhea casually asked if the stunned onlookers agreed the process was pretty simple. Blown away, Kim Shimon demanded to know who this legendary mage was, while their completely calm instructor simply asked who wanted to step up next. An annoyed blue-eyed girl snapped at him to stop playing dumb and just reveal the brilliant caster's identity. The young mentor could tell she was getting truly mad. Her blood boiling, a clash was inevitable now. Deciding not to drag things out, he dropped a bomb. The archmage was dead, throwing her off guard, handing a clean white feather to the startled Park Sohun. He told her to give it a shot, leaving Kim Shimon looking quite dejected. Just a few seconds later, a soft blue glow started rising from the excited girl's hands, proving the ritual was working. She muttered nothing was happening, but her instructor told her to keep pouring in her mana, and get this, the white feather started turning pitch black, looking absolutely stunning. The puzzled girl had no clue what was happening, but he calmly explained his theory about her element was right. He noted that Park's affinity was the exact opposite of light, shadow. And she wasn't just matching her famous grandfather's legacy. Next, the young man called on Cho-jin to step up, passing him the ritual feather. The item in the boy's hands instantly ignited into roaring blue fire. It was a mesmerizing sight, but the alarmed hero immediately yelled out. He demanded the confused student drop the flame, but the boy just stood there, unable to believe it was real fire since it felt completely harmless and cool. He asked what element he possessed, but his mentor simply stared back at him, locking eyes in silence for a few heavy moments. Then, his true power was revealed. His attribute was light, the exact opposite of Park Sohun standing right behind him. Later, Jin Woo and the young girl were standing out on the quiet street, where she admitted she had been thinking. She realized that, unlike Jin Woo, she really could not harness her grandfather's magic, while her quiet teacher listened closely. Now that everything was starting to finally make sense, she decided to view the entire situation from a brand new perspective. Jin Woo could see she had spent a long time reflecting, and she confirmed it with a soft, sad smile. She deeply regretted losing access to her grandfather's ancestral power, but she hated seeing his legacy fade away. Mrs. Shaman mentioned how many ancient arts were lost forever this way, while he asked what Park Sohun really wanted. Surprisingly, the eager student announced that she wanted to train Jin Woo, who obviously needed the guidance. The stunned youth could not believe this quiet, introverted classmate had offered something so incredibly generous. He asked if she truly wanted to share those family spells, and Park Sohun confirmed she could not let her grandfather's legacy die. The wise mentor stepped in, asking if she was truly ready to teach a guy she had only recently met, but the young girl firmly nodded. The teacher warned her that she might quickly change her mind. Once she witnessed Jinwoo in action, quietly Park So-hun agreed that she would need to closely watch and evaluate him first, noticing she did not seem mentally drained at all. Jinwoo figured it was either a perk of being so young or her mind had simply grown stronger. Rubbing his chin thoughtfully, he wondered if maybe he was just such a brilliant instructor that he had speeded up her progress. Still, he wondered how her grandfather had ever handled a teenager whose mood constantly shifted like the wind. The teacher expected him to easily agree, but the young man immediately rejected the unexpected offer, stunning both Hia and Kim Chaman. He had nothing against Park So-hun, but he refused to let her become his master. The older woman instantly snapped, demanding to know why he was backing away from this study. She believed he did not fully grasp the weight of the situation, but he already knew exactly how massive of an opportunity this was for his magic. Staying perfectly calm, he quietly explained that he truly did not want to learn from his classmate. Mr. Wu did not want to push him, gently asking for his actual reasons. Scratching his head with a sheepish, soft grin, the young man admitted that he simply could not view his friend as a master. His words left a heavy, awkward silence hanging in the room as the elders stared deep into his eyes. The flustered hero thought it was a ridiculous excuse, unable to believe he would toss away the legendary path of becoming an arch-mage. Jinwoo assured them he knew this golden chance was a once-in-a-lifetime event, but he deeply respected how much those spells truly meant to Park So-hun. Most mages awaken when they are incredibly young, some even the moment they first learn to stand. But this boy awakened way too late, so he never believed he was smart enough to master magic. That insecurity is likely why he stayed so incredibly naive, always dreading failure. He just could not bear the thought of Park So-hyun being disappointed in him. After all, mages who grow up isolated rarely develop any real social skills. Jinwoo even admitted he has no grand ambitions of becoming a legendary archmage. He is perfectly happy just being an average, everyday wizard with zero expectations. Unwilling to waste another second, the calm Hash lets Jinwoo leave, which instantly panics Kim Shaman. The anxious girl cannot believe it. Her partner is giving up so easily. She protests, urging him to realize the true worth of the kid's magic. He needs to understand the value of Park So-hyun's unique sorcery, but Hash remains completely unmoved. Hash asks the mentor if Jinwoo is truly as hopeless as he claims, but she cannot say. The mentor explains that when it comes to magic, talent is highly complex and hard to define. It is almost impossible to explain to someone who is not a magic user. Sure, anyone can learn the basics, but it takes time. But unique magic is a completely different story, defying all normal rules. A basic spellcaster might suddenly get a spark of genius and instantly rise to an archmage. Others are just plain unlucky, meaning it often comes down to sheer fortune. Curious, the protagonist asks again, what does that mean for Jinwoo? Shrugging, Kim Shaman says they will never know until they try. The boy built mental walls because carrying this legacy felt far too heavy. Trying to master this ancient power has become an overwhelming burden for him. It is a massive weight. Kim Shaman completely understands his fear. She asks if Park So-hyun chose this insecure kid for a specific reason. Deep in thought, Hash recalls how lost he felt when he was just a teenager. Since he had no answers back then, he has no easy advice for Jinwoo. He remembers how his father used to hold his tiny hands, cherishing their time together. With a warm smile, Hong Shukan promised to stand by his son, no matter what. He told his boy that there was absolutely nothing to worry about. He could go to college, get a normal job, or even become a world-famous hunter. But seeing the kid's miserable face, the loving father asks if he truly hates him. Squeezing his hand, the man begs his son to understand that he has feelings, too. He is only human. This situation hurts him deeply as a parent. Pulling the kid close, Hong Shukan smiles and says the boy can even hit him. Suddenly, the boy whips around, begging them to finally stop this painful charade. The father asks if there is any love left, but the bitter boy responds with fury. He shouts that he hates him from the very bottom of his heart. He is the one who crossed the line to test his limits, so he cannot complain now. It seems highly unlikely he can pull off that same trick again. But at the very least, dealing with a teenager's temper is still manageable. Stepping outside, Hash approaches Park So-hyun as she lounges on a deck chair. He informs her that Jinwoo flat out refused to learn the magic. Shockingly, the girl is sweating bullets and has absolutely no idea how to react. Her confusion is incredibly obvious. She remains completely speechless. Calmly, the mentor explains that the boy simply feels entirely unworthy. The boy felt he had zero talent and simply couldn't keep learning from her. Connect with Park Seo-hyun as his teacher. The beauty asked if he had tried to persuade him, but he explained he refused to pressure the kid. The girl countered that he pressured her, promising to turn her into an archmage. But he argued that was different, leaving her confused, looking back at his sincere words. The young man felt a warm glow and smiled softly, realizing there was absolutely no arguing with her. Clearing his throat, he explained that she was his direct disciple, making Jinwoo her own student. Hearing this deeply moved and shocked the young woman, leaving her completely speechless. For a brief moment, he knew his first duty was being completely honest. He had to guide him. Suddenly, the young mage did something incredibly unexpected. She aggressively ripped a blank page right out of her notebook. Then she dramatically crumpled the paper up and shoved it into her mouth. Shocked, Kim Ki-min and Hee froze on the spot, utterly speechless. They watched in disbelief as Seo-hyun happily chewed the paper, grinning widely. The hyperactive girl confidently promised to do exactly as her teacher requested. Meanwhile, a flashback reveals Seok-young walking into his young son's room, offering to talk, only for the boy to snap that they had nothing to discuss. The cold boy claimed he was not his son, breaking his adoptive father's heart. Suddenly, the normally quiet, gentle man snapped and yelled out his name. This instantly startled the boy. Shaken, young Hee turned his gaze toward him. Beads of nervous sweat forming on his face, the father immediately froze up, devastated that he had actually raised his voice at his precious son. Without hesitation, Seok-young dropped to his knees, moving closer to the chair. Holding onto the armrest, the man tried to regain his absolute composure. He gently told Hee that he was his one and only son. The trembling boy thought it was pity and promised to leave when older. His adoptive father tried to console him, but the boy cut him off. Hee begged his adoptive father never to speak his name ever again. He bitterly pointed out that he was nothing like a real son. Hee warned him not to mistake him for family, feeling worthless. He claimed he was just a stray dog Seok-young rescued from the streets. The shocked hunter could not believe this, but Hee kept pressing on. He explained that he overheard the truth from his father's elite hunter friends. The boy believed his presence was just a public relations cover for an orphan. His adoptive father tried to protest, swearing that Hee was no substitute. The kid scoffed, asking if this was just a heartwarming media stunt. Refusing to get angry, Seok-young kept his cool amidst the painful words. He desperately searched for the right words to heal his son's broken heart. Reaching out, the father admitted he also fled an orphanage at 19. That was the exact day he awakened his powers as a hunter. He saw himself in young Hee and refused to let him suffer alone. Every word that left the veteran hunter's lips carried pure, unconditional love. He chose to be his dad, pulling the crying boy into a tight embrace. Watching this play out, Kim Ki-min was completely lost in thought. She found Mr. Woo's mysterious teaching style to be rather questionable. She hated putting so much pressure on the students, but he assured her it worked. He insisted it was the only way they would learn, even when she questioned him. Or they pushed too hard, he didn't think so, they had to adapt. They had to learn to handle stress, the calm mentor explained a moment later. He watched them closely. These kids were just far too emotional. Worse, they gave up at the slightest setback, not a great trait. Apparently, Jinwoo only refused because he was terrified of disappointing Park So-hyun. Hearing this, a surprised Kim nodded and said she finally understood. He suggested they focus on improving how the students connected with one another. They had to keep them alert, just as the crying boy removed his glasses. We heard everything, the boy sobbed. The girl, however, stayed dead silent. But then the boy surprised everyone by showing some real backbone. He declared he would give it his absolute all, and 2 days later, he visited the teacher. Holding a piece of paper, he asked if she could review his latest work. An enthusiastic Park So-hyun took the papers, eager to look them over immediately. Scanning the pages, she was pleased to see his work had vastly improved. Meanwhile, Hij stood nearby, sweating bullets and wondering if he had messed up. The teacher pointed out a few corrections, glad that Jinwoo was finally trying. Finally, some real backbone, no more acting like a wimp. Out in the yard, the other students kept clashing with their wooden swords. A confident So Hansen bragged that Lee Sunyan would have been easily skewered. Naturally, the other boy dismissed his boasting as total nonsense, sparking an argument. Caught right in the middle, poor Hidge was getting a massive headache. The hot-tempered boy demanded the teacher step in and name the true winner. Instead, the mentor calmly told them to settle the score with a quick game. Wait, rock, paper, scissors. The boys were utterly speechless. They complained about the stupid rule, but the teacher called it his method. Just then, a bright yellow car arrived, and Madame Shaman stepped right out. The students bowed respectfully, and a polite Jin Woo smiled at her return. Meanwhile, a curious Park Sohun asked if this was the document she mentioned. She handed over a standard student contract, which immediately dampened the mood. The kids looked tense, though Kim had signed 1 year ago. However, this version had to be carefully adjusted for their specific situation. The lady apologized for the brief paperwork, explaining she kept it simple. Her own training under her father had required studying 2 massive volumes. He remarked that the bond between master and disciple is incredibly deep. Yet when those ties break, they often end up fighting in court. A colleague even brought up a recent knife fight, entirely unfazed by it. While the kids shuddered, they heard about a girl forced into 10 years of obedience. She did it all for an education, until she finally snapped from the abuse. The perceptive Hidge believed she would be acquitted, but Jin Woo was horrified. The poor kid stood speechless, while a gentle Park Sohun offered some comfort. She urged them to speak up instead of resorting to violence when stressed. Unfortunately, neither of the kids understood a single word of the contract. Her grandfather had never taught her about contracts. The nerd could have explained it and told her there was nothing to fear if he actually understood it himself. But Kim Shimin cut in, asking if they would write down the actual terms. The charmer Park So-hyun agreed to do it without making things complicated. While her student watched closely, the first clause stated that Park So-hyun would teach Jin Woo the magic she inherited from her grandfather, including a unique navigator for everyone. He also had to acknowledge her ownership of the spells, and any future successor would be chosen through discussion between them. In the event of the mentor's death, the young man could choose the heir himself. And vice versa. Once everything was written down, the girl broke the marker in two to use the red ink inside. Then she pressed her thumb against the paper to leave a makeshift seal. Done, the contract was officially sealed. Watching in surprise, Kim Shimin stared intently as Park So-hyun concentrated as hard as she could. Finally, the charmer announced that everything was ready, and the stunned lady Kim Shimin asked if this was really their contract. The assistant asked if that was all, but the girl replied that nothing more was needed, adding that Jin Woo was free to add anything else. After reviewing the document, the young man asked if it was true that he could choose his own successors, receiving an affirmative nod. No complications. The young man truly hoped everything would go smoothly and promised to train anyone more talented if they appeared, but Kim Shimin asked if they understood this was a legally binding document that needed far more details. The polite Park So-hyun countered that the lady could certify the contract, and with the Archmaid's approval, there should be no problems. Jin Woo realized that even if either of them decided to betray him, it would just be a learning experience. Neither he nor Mrs. Kim Shimin could live the students' lives or decide what was best for them, so it was not worth interfering. The enthusiastic Park So-hyun heard that 3 was a lucky number and decided to ask the director to sign the document too. The imperturbable Heijo did not refuse, signing the paper without a single hesitation. It's official now. The contract is officially active. And the contract was officially active and must be followed. No one could disregard the agreement now that they had signatures, and everything was reinforced with seals. On a beautiful, sunny day, the young teacher stood in the schoolyard watching white birds drift across the sky, sipping hot coffee. Jin Woo enjoyed every minute, thinking to himself that he was extremely happy. But get this, our alert hero knows that this peace reigned over the world despite the fact that in 20 years, the end would come. Meanwhile, in his office, the cheerful director Hung Shakung mentioned that Hunter Lee was investigating the matter. He asked how the kids were doing since the practical test was coming up fast, but the teacher said he was only responsible for the magic class. The director asked why the young man was so cold, reminding him that his job as a mentor was to look after all of them. The Director noted that the young man was not overloaded at all, but this young man countered, asking if the director had not just shifted all the work unto him. The headmaster replied that Park So-hyun was still the only one teaching. That magic was exactly why the hero helped watch over them whenever he got a chance. With a wide grin, the director in the black turtleneck asked a sharp question. He sarcastically asked if that was true, while his colleague questioned Teacher Wu. She urged him to try harder, reminding him of his big educational responsibility. Even if this hunting instinct was nonsense, he still could not understand his anger. The serious young man guessed that his frustration was simply because there was no work. But that was not the real answer. He wondered about the upcoming holidays. Do people normally completely forget about their vacations when they focus so much on work? That was when an incredibly happy Jin Woo suddenly yelled out in excitement. He successfully cast the spell, and the teacher instantly threw open the street door. The excited boy asked if his mentor had witnessed his success, but heard nothing back. Then a joyful Park So-hyun explained that this was actually her grandfather's unique magic. Glowing green leaves fluttered down. Talk about a stunning visual. Stunned, Teacher Wu could not believe she mastered this rare magic so fast. She seemed to be an absolute genius, though the girl humbly denied it. After that, the teacher quietly wondered if his initial judgment had been wrong. Her grandfather used her special mana to bring light into the darkest places. It was also incredibly useful for finding traps, which made Hija look down. The young teacher noticed a bright white light forming a ring near his feet. Park So-hyun called the magic absolutely incredible, eagerly asking if he agreed. She was no longer a gloomy, quiet girl closed off from the world. Instead, she smiled sincerely, feeling on cloud nine as Director Hong arrived. He looked incredibly pleased, giving a big thumbs up in approval as he just stayed calm. He turned to the young sorceress to ask her how the mana analysis was going. She simply clutched her notebook tightly, not knowing what to say. She stammered out that she was still working on it, making him wonder. He asked if Teacher Kim had taught her that, but Park So-hyun looked down. She sat down, admitting the shaman had never shared that secret knowledge. Her personal mana was completely different from what her grandfather once described. She could not understand why, but imitating light magic with it was impressive. Because she could cast light magic with this mana, he just saw her as a genius. The young teacher told her not to get too bogged down in such complexities. He urged her to stay calm and not burden herself with unnecessary worries. He advised her not to get fixated on light and shadow, suggesting a different approach. She should treat it as a separate element since Park So-hyun was good at basics. Hija then knelt down to show a quick demonstration to a standing student. He explained that applying the magic was exactly the same as she watched closely. She watched attentively with deep interest as he dug a tiny hole. In the ground, the young teacher asked her to try filling it with water. He playfully asked if she could handle such an easy task, and she nodded. She confidently agreed, focusing all of her energy as hard as she could. The confident girl unleashed her magic to summon a powerful stream of water. The observant teacher then instructed her to boil the water, and she immediately complied. As the water bubbled, the demanding Hija pushed her to keep going. He urged her to try even harder until she finally cut the spell off. He asks her if she gets it now, then immediately turns his attention to So-hyun. He challenges her to think about why she can wield light magic, the exact opposite of dark magic. Honestly, he isn't a mage himself, so he's only speaking theoretically. But water and fire are different elements, and their magical formulas aren't clear-cut. The stressed student racks her brain, trying to come up with a logical answer. She doesn't want to fail. He suggests that So-hyun could trigger the opposite effect by simply running the entire spell formula completely in reverse. He leaves her to ponder, and she bows her head, sinking into deep thought. He tells her she has to figure out the remaining steps on her own. But if she gets stuck, she can always ask Teacher Kim for help instead. When she asks if she can just consult him, he gently pokes her forehead. He points out once again that he has zero understanding of magic. Because he is no mage, our protagonist falls silent, watching her closely. He notices something odd. So-hyun seems strangely terrified when her bangs fall down. Why is she so scared? Originally, there were supposed to be 10. But right now, only 8 of those kids are actually still here. The room feels pretty empty now, making him highly curious about the timeline differences. He wonders how things compare between the original and this temporary timeline. Usually, students struggle for years before this place becomes a proper hunting academy. At that moment, the mentor walks over to Jae-yoon at her desk. She is desperately trying to control her magic, but he calmly instructs her to focus harder, which absolutely startles her. The teacher quickly points out that a hunter must stay focused in any situation, but she tearfully replies that she is just a healer. He asks if healers somehow avoid going into dungeons. Hearing this, the student shuts her mouth and silently tries to cast again. Keeping a completely blank expression, he closely watches her movements. He asks how her little sister is doing, mentioning that he heard she went with the director to register as an awakened person. Jae-yoon turns pale with shock, barely keeping her intense panic under control. He wonders what is wrong, and she says she has absolutely no clue where her little sister got those ideas. She barely managed to stop the kid from freezing her feet in ice, leaving Hee completely baffled by it. Apparently, the younger sister muttered some nonsense about helping her blood circulation using that weird ice method. It makes no sense. The exhausted guy finally realizes why he has been so worried lately. Jae-yoon mentions that her sister couldn't fix her blocked veins. So yesterday, she decided to clean her gut and ate cabbage all day. Feeling incredibly awkward, the teacher tries to comfort his upset student. But inside, he knows he absolutely cannot lose the young girl. Hae-yoon, especially since she might get dragged into a dangerous cult training camp. He calms his nerves and lets out a tiny smirk, a plan forming. He tells himself there is no need to worry about this anymore. In his mind, he already pictures her as his future assistant. In a flashback, a young Hee sits alone in his quiet room. His peaceful day is suddenly interrupted by Hong Seok-young, who wants a word. Looking over his son's homework, the father asked what this essay about his future profession actually meant. The youngster asked if his dad really called himself a hunter without understanding what his job entailed, but the father wanted to hear the boy's thoughts first. He just simply wanted a stable career, and Hong Seok-young agreed that was a smart way to think. Heeja also did not want to be bossed around, so he aspired to hold a high position where he could command others. Only one thing put him off. Private company jobs were highly unstable, prompting his father to ask where he learned that. With total confidence, Heeja declared that he would absolutely become a civil servant. Being president was way too difficult and stressful anyway. He preferred being a manager who delegated all the hard responsibilities to others. Sure, the starting salary was low, but Heeja accepted that he could not get everything at once, and his realistic mindset deeply impressed Hong Seok-young. Stunned by his son's intelligence, the man was speechless at first. Needing a moment to process it, finally, he patted the boy's head and told him that wanting to be a leader was a fantastic goal. He promised to support his beloved son's dreams in every way possible, no matter the effort. Years flash by. The young man is walking through the bustling city streets, carrying his backpack, when a familiar voice suddenly calls out from behind. Strict Eugen demands to know why he did not apply to the Hunter Academy. But Heeja calmly replies that he is aiming for civil service, not monster hunting. The frustrated girl calls it pure nonsense and warns that his father will be absolutely furious. Next, she confidently challenges him to a friendly sparring match, but Heeja refuses immediately, pointing out his big exam next week. Smug Eugen tries to sway him, bragging that hunters do not need exams. Heeja fires back that avoiding tests would make him just as brainless as her, earning him a frustrated insult. More years pass and Heeja finally secures his civil servant job, praising his team for clearing a tough dungeon. He urges them to become elite professional hunters, but then asks what drives them to choose such a dangerous, high-risk career path. He leaves them to reflect on that question. Suddenly, someone asks why Heeja himself never chose the path of a hunter. With a quiet smile, Heeja admits he is just not fond of violence. Fighting is exhausting, and he has no desire to drag himself into unnecessary combat. Besides, he is not about to risk his life for pocket change anyway. Later, the young manager stands at a busy crosswalk, waiting for the light. On sudden impulse, Heeja visited Eugen's school. Now he has absolutely no clue what his next move should be. Staring at the red light, the observant young man spots something unusual. He narrows his eyes, focusing ahead to figure out what is happening. Just across the busy street, Eugen is staring intensely at a small flyer in her hands. He just sighs, realizing she is still completely obsessed with all that hunter stuff. Clearly, there is no way she is letting that dream go anytime soon. A passing woman chuckles, asking Eugen if she actually believes in those things. But the young girl looks back with a rather confused expression. The woman suggests that this strange article about mana is actually quite fascinating. He needs to learn from an expert to avoid getting hurt, and the tension is building, making him even more anxious, unable to cross the street. But as soon as the light hits 0 seconds before switching to green, this anxious young man instantly runs over to Yuji. The excited girl is absolutely thrilled to see the mentor she has always dreamed of learning from. Smiling, she asks what he is doing here, and he honestly has no idea how to answer. The delighted lady asks if he is this charming girl's teacher, praising his handsome looks. He nods to confirm it and asks who she is, while the stranger apologizes for totally forgetting to introduce herself. It turns out she belongs to the National Association of New Mind and Spirit, their leader, Chung Yun-hwa. She is quite sure he will not be able to fully grasp her line of work just from the title, though he suspects it is a typical organization. The woman explains that they run different events for children while also assisting those who are struggling with the bizarre incidents happening down in the underground. Families like Wuhages come to them, though he still does not fully grasp what they actually do. It turns out many teachers and child care workers come by, seeking ways to better support their students. The elegant Chung Yun-hwa admits that trust is hard to find in this dangerous world, yet she confidently assures him that their group is completely reliable. Gesturing toward the Gyeonggi branch sign, she mentions that their offices are scattered nationwide and fully backed by the government. Accepting the business card, the young teacher starts to carefully scan the printed details, choosing not to linger on it. The composed mentor, keeping a completely cool head, turns his gaze toward Yu Jong, asking if she told her sister to head straight home after their class, leaving the girl feeling guilty. He warns her not to get distracted by nonsense and just head to her destination, and the young girl does not dare to argue. Quietly disappointed, she bids farewell to her mentor, walking straight ahead without a single backward glance. Meanwhile, our hero remarks that he expected the friendly Chung Yun-hwa to hold the girl back, but the mysterious woman just looks puzzled by his words. Smiling, she promises that if he just listens to her, he could really help. The shrewd young man has no doubt she values an adult teacher over a 16-year-old girl. This strange lady pulls a tablet from her bag, asking her to look over some photos of their headquarters, adding that major corporations support their noble cause because they truly believe in public good. Our quiet hero remains completely expressionless, simply staring at the images on the screen. Then he suddenly admits he is not actually a school teacher, which instantly wipes the smile from Yona's face. The calm youth confesses he only stumbled into mentoring by accident, and that his background is entirely different. Then he asks if she has heard about the exclusive prep school for future hunters, instantly making her tense. Recognizing it as the training ground where elite young awakened ones are groomed, she asks if he is actually an instructor there. Without a single second of hesitation, he nods, pointing out that it is no easy task given the immense weight on his shoulders. Understanding this completely, she figured the young man had already been through a lot. She asked if Haiji was a hunter too, and he admitted his rank was pretty low. Still, she believed what truly mattered was his absolute devotion to his students. Setting her device aside, she suggested grabbing a cup of coffee together. As they walked to a local cafe, she continued giving her advice. Chung advised that he should listen closely to learn more about teaching. After all, Haiji was merely a novice, a young rookie hunter. With a rank that low, he had absolutely nothing to brag about yet. It had only been a month since he started teaching, and he felt awkward whenever anyone called him a mentor, but to the naked eye, his genuine care for his students was clear as day and highly commendable. But anyone that devoted, with ties to a tracking hunter, is easy prey. Right for the cult, back at school, he showed the principal a card. It was a business card from the National Society of New Minds and Spirit. Quite surprised, the principal asked where on earth he got this card. Apparently, some woman on the street had just randomly handed him the number. He ran into her while she was talking to his sister, Yu Haeyun. The principal confirmed the sister's name, and Haiji warned she needed close watching. He asked if Hong Xiang was monitoring her, but the older man shrugged. Technically, he was just a trusted guardian, but the duty remained the same. The young teacher added that the woman seemed pleased with his dedication. She loved hearing his concern for the kids, even sharing a lesson plan. Hong Ziyang asked if he really wanted to contact this strange national society, especially since the young man could not even remember their proper official name. Yet Haiji wanted to talk, suggesting that since he met the lady, maybe another teacher like himself could go meet them in his place. But his suggestion only brought a knowing smile to the older man's face. After all, Haiji was on probation and could not just leave without warning. He knew slipping away without warning would only cause a massive headache. The rookie wondered if the director trusted him a bit too much. Noticing his hesitant look, Hong Ziyang asked if something was bothering him. Smiling, Haiji admitted he just was not cut out for this kind of work. The older man raised an eyebrow, not quite catching his drift yet. Haiji clarified that gathering intel and tracking really were not his forte. Confused, Hong Ziyang asked why, and Haiji claimed he simply had no talent. Hearing such absurd nonsense, the principal's face completely twisted in disbelief. He stared silently at the rookie, who just stood there with hands in pockets. Pointing a finger at Haiji, puffing out his cheeks, the man nearly lost it. He absolutely lost it, bursting into a hysterical fit of wild laughter. His booming voice echoed so loudly that it scared away nearby birds. He laughed so uncontrollably that actual tears started welling up. Tears streamed down, but he could not stop. An annoyed Haiji demanded answers. The director was just incredibly amused that the boy thought he would fail. Haiji kept his cool, replying that while he had done plenty before, he still lacked any real confidence when it came to investigative work. Zakin asks if he has ever snuck into secure zones to grab intel. Wu makes it crystal clear that is definitely not his job. The director leans on the table, thinking silently for a moment. Then he stands up, asking if the ARC is even aware of this. Patting Wu on the shoulder, Director Hong tells him to chill. Honestly, Hong already forgot the name of the place they are targeting. Wu sighs and repeats it, the National Society of New Minds and Spirit. Hong just wants him to go in and dig up some dirt. But HJ looks totally baffled, insisting once more that he cannot do it. Before they leave, Sakin reminds him that his kids are great motivation. With those kids on the line, everything has to work out. Sakin smiles, telling Wu he is just underestimating himself. He is just creating mental limits in his own head. Suddenly, the director looks serious. Will the teacher end up in trouble? If Wu gets too close to people, he might easily get recognized. That is a massive risk, but Hong knows Wu is smart. He is positive the clever young guy has a backup plan ready. He is not worried. Wu walks the city streets like a free man. Hong assumes it is just like dealing with the Exodus situation. Wu just smiles back. He wants to explain, but it is complicated. He admits he usually wears a mask, so barely anyone knows his face. There is really no reason to stress out over his safety. Hearing that, the cheerful Hong Shakong immediately beams with relief. Now Wu can focus on his job, but Hong has one final warning. Do not overthink, just stick to the lecture and do not take risks. He tells Wu to keep it safe and to stay reachable. Make sure that phone is turned on so they do not lose contact. Wait, Sakin is shocked. How can a guy not even own a cell phone? What does he even do in his downtime? Wu answers simply. He spends his free time building a custom training program. Sakin is stunned. Wu asks how else he is supposed to teach. You cannot raise students without a real plan. Hong gets nervous. He admits the kids need deep knowledge on monsters and active hunting. But Hong is pretty terrible at that kind of theory work. Wu flashes a creepy smile, asking if Hong thinks anyone else is better. That shuts Hong up, and the director quickly excuses himself. Fast forward to June 15th, right inside the dungeon training grounds. Kim Shem is super tense while helping Wu gear up. She wonders how Wu can stay so completely calm in a place like this. He is not wearing armor, just a cheap, heavily patched leather vest. She decides it is time to lay her cards on the table. She asks him directly, what rank is he actually hiding? Even if he is an unregistered hunter, some data has to exist. Wu acts polite, asking if she missed seeing his official license. He smiles, claiming he is just a level D size. He kept in mind that this was the absolute best way to avoid raising any suspicion. According to her, Li M had to sweat blood to forge all those official documents. Detailing Heeja's fake past, Hai was highly curious about what kind of person she actually was. Since she could build a whole new identity in just a couple of days, she actually admitted that she had wondered about it too. The blonde lady gave a mysterious reply, warning that it was far better for her not to know. It was honestly a bit too terrifying. Strapping some special boots onto her partner's feet, Kim Chaman asked if he really believed the kids would survive this basic hunter training. Hai replied that the guild had cleared out the dungeon beforehand. If the trainees still failed, they needed to seriously reconsider if they even had what it takes to be hunters. Watching closely, Kim Chaman pointed out that he forgot to teach them how to pick a team leader. Hai simply smirked, asking how many of these recruits had ever stepped foot inside a dungeon before. Some of them were already official members of established hunter guilds. This caught Kim Chaman off guard, but she had to agree with him. Still, she noted that Han Xiang and Hun Wuk had zero raid experience and required a full explanation. Hai asked if that overly cocky kid really knew absolutely nothing. She replied that their talented fighter was actually backed by a guild, which was news to the young instructor. Hai had no clue about his background. It was pretty hilarious to him that this annoying little piglet had actually managed to join a real organization, even though Hun Wuk was technically the victim. He acted like a total idiot and got injured for it, which Hai found highly entertaining. Soon, Kim Chaman cheerfully announced that the gear check was completely finished and ready to go. Flashing a sweet, bright smile, the lovely Kim Chaman told him she was handing the trainees over to Mr. Hai. He offered a silent, knowing smile in return, needing no words to understand. The nearby team watched them closely, clearly holding immense respect for Hai. Scanning the gathered crowd, our main character immediately spotted that little piglet Hun Wuk glaring back at him with deep suspicion. The kid only brought an amused grin to his mentor's face. Hai resolved to teach him how to behave like an actual human being, not some wild beast. Later, Kim So-yeon from the National Underground Management Department walked right up to Hai on the busy street. A bit startled, the young instructor looked into her eyes and politely introduced himself, trying to stay calm. Greeting him warmly, the official asked if he had all the raid documentation ready. Hai nodded confidently and handed over a thick folder detailing the entire dungeon clearing operation, along with his personal credentials and his students' licenses. Taking a much closer look at her face, Hai felt a sudden wave of familiarity, while Kim So-yeon quietly reviewed the paperwork. Hai racked his brain, certain that they had crossed paths somewhere before. Noticing his intense, lingering gaze, she gently asked if anything was wrong. Hai quickly forced a smile and assured her that everything was fine. Claiming he was just slightly nervous about the mission, she mentioned that Hunter Hung had highly praised his group's impressive combat potential. Hai warned that they still could not afford to get careless. Kim So-yeon smiled, thoroughly agreeing with his caution. Suddenly, an annoyed Saoyoung appeared right behind them, demanding. He wondered why she always yelled at him, but spoke nicely to Hee. The angry woman snapped back that she wouldn't need to scold him if he just did his job right. Her voice sounded familiar to the young man. Then it clicked. She was the exact instructor present on the day of that brutal laboratory attack. Hee never expected to cross paths with her like this again, and he realized instructor Kim must have faced major hardships during this time. You couldn't tell just by looking at her, but she was still his ultimate role model. The instructor noted that if things got too dangerous, the team should evacuate immediately. Questioning the protocols, the director doubted if evacuation was necessary with him standing right there. But she coldly reminded him that rules are rules. Still, the man just didn't get it. He questioned why rules were necessary, prompting her to shut him down. She demanded he stop asking stupid questions while Hee watched the crowd. He silently predicted they would soon be crying. Honestly, who could blame them? Turning around, he calmly announced it was time to move. Kim So-yeol apologized for the delay. She quickly caught up, and right then, the instructor made an announcement. They were heading to Ganggi Province, straight to the underground city of Hoisin. Hee confirmed that all 9 participants were fully prepared for the mission. He introduced himself as Woo Hee, their official mentor. It was 12 past 11. And the rookie hunters were buzzing with nervous energy. Within minutes, they had arrived. Standing in the dark underground, their strict teacher demanded their full attention. Hee firmly reminded them that he would not lift a single finger to help. Their final scores would depend entirely on their personal contribution during the cleanup. The perceptive Lee Seongyeon was the very first to raise a question. Asking how these test results would affect them, the mentor replied with a smirk. Low scores meant they would have to face the terrifying principal in person and attend grueling remedial classes. The worse their grade, the more classes they had, which was the absolute last thing any of these students wanted to hear. Not wanting to waste any more time on small talk, Yi bid them farewell. They were totally on their own. Get ready, because things are about to get real. He vanished directly into the thick, dark bushes, leaving the terrified kids behind. A panicked student cried out, asking what they should do, but got no reply. Realizing they were alone, they quickly decided they must destroy the dungeon core first. The brave Hyunwook pointed out that based on their scout intelligence, their target lay somewhere deep in the eastern sector of the forest. He warned them that they would have to cross paths with wild pixies. After asking if everyone remembered the strategy, he turned his focus to the runes. He inquired about the mana-concealing runes, which Park So-hyun and Jinwoo immediately presented. With everything set, they advanced cautiously, scanning the dense foliage for any sudden threats. He watched quietly from the shadows, feeling a bit awkward just spectating. He hated standing on the sidelines, but he had to let them learn. This overgrown, forest-like dungeon was packed with dangerous flora. Then out of nowhere, a bizarre creature emerged. The local pixies were wild beasts. They possessed just enough intelligence to extinguish fire, despite having 0 water sources nearby. The young hunters were eager to spark a flame, but before they could strategize, Hyunwook recklessly charged straight into the brutal fray completely alone. An inner voice whispered that if they caught this detail, they would succeed 100%, but at the same time, the young man knew none of them would get the highest score since they lacked experience. Suddenly, a massive swarm of strange winged monsters began to attack the team, closing in from different sides and completely surrounding them, but the cool-headed Hansang refused to let the vile creatures get close. Swinging his sword, a very tense Hyunwook exclaimed that they were surrounded, but the swordsman kept his cool, grabbing a flying pixie with his bare hand. The stern warrior ordered the mages to cast their shields as soon as possible. A confused Jinwoo struggled to focus, while Park So-hyun seemed much calmer. Channeling every ounce of her focus, the girl took a deep breath and began flooding the surrounding area with her powerful mana. The ruthless young man ordered them to wipe out the pathetic bugs blocking their path. Blending into the shadows from behind, the nimble Hansang aimed his sharp blade at the pixies who had crashed into the barrier. The cold-blooded warrior had 0 thoughts of mercy and quickly finished off the remaining beasts. Trying to catch his breath, Hyunwook asked them to double-check that every single creature was dead. He then noted this was their third skirmish and asked how the mages were progressing with their rune papers. Smiling, Park So-hyun replied that they had already inspected everything and found no issues, meaning the team would reach the core shortly, or so they thought. No one ruled out the chance that target locations in this C-rank dungeon might suddenly shift as they moved deeper. One of the team members noted that this felt surprisingly easy compared to other zones. Yun then asked if Park So-hyun had been in caves before, and she explained she had visited them with her grandfather, though they only cleared basic rank caves. A gloomy Sunjin said she had once followed her teacher into a C-rank cave for training, but found it quite underwhelming. She added that this current path was actually far easier to clear. And an enthusiastic Yun asked if this meant their skills were simply on another level. Listening from the dense bushes, the mentor considered that too be foolish overconfidence, but he quietly observed without stepping in. A serious Hyunwook remarked that despite the skepticism, the director wouldn't have let them in if he doubted their raw talent. The hero was struck by how Hyunwook never once called him mentor. The young man then added that the mentor claimed the surrounding caves were already secured, making him suspect they were pre-cleared and advanced to guarantee their safety, and that was indeed the case. As they walked, the fighter pointed out that pixies always travel in swarms, asking his companions why they had only encountered 8 targets. However, the skeptical young man dismissed the hero's warning of non-intervention, viewing it as nothing more than a cheap bluff to make them anxious. The brave warrior even wagered their mentor was hiding behind some tree nearby, rolling his eyes because he could see right through the act. Tucked away in the bushes, the teacher heard every single arrogant word, keeping his cool to avoid reacting. Still, he wondered if he should ramp up the dungeon's overall difficulty, especially since the students found it so incredibly simple. Whispering to himself, the mentor vowed that he would teach these rude children to mind their words. Unfortunately, most of the tragedies of this world all started with dungeons, bringing nothing but chaos. Wandering a ruined street, a small boy was stopped by a concerned stranger. The blond man gently asked if it was true that the young boy had only just awakened. At first, there was only silence. The mysterious man simply smiled. With no one else around, he decided to ask for the boy's name. Amidst distant explosions, the stranger learned the boy was named Hun Wook. He promised they would be friends now, inviting the youngster to his guild. The leader insisted it would be a complete waste to leave his talent untrained. The boy agreed, and his new acquaintance offered to train him for free. He claimed he just wanted to help him unlock his true potential. By learning new skills in their guild, he could easily become a hunter. But it did not take long for Hun Wook to realize the truth. That cunning smile meant trouble, and then his life turned to hell. Now clad in a crisp suit, the young man headed to his class. Whispers filled the room about the fearless hunter named Heije. He was captured by vicious monsters while saving someone named Lee Sen. Our main character wanted to thank him, but felt too hesitant to approach. Suddenly he spun around. Hun Wook stood right behind him, utterly confused. Their mentor figured the lecture on runes was just too boring for him. He did not want to overload the newcomer on his very first day. Instead, Hun Wook felt a cold stare. He was just an object. He was looking at him like a mere tool, absolute cannon fodder. It made him sick. Meanwhile, on the battlefield, dead pixies lay scattered. Panting heavily, Yu Hoyun noticed their numbers were shrinking. Her companion explained that they were finally nearing the dungeon's core. Since this run was pretty easy, their instructor would find an excuse to dock points. Highly annoyed after their long trek, she really wanted to punch that smug guy. He kept insisting they had not done enough, which pushed her to the limit. She tried asking if they could tone down the training intensity. But get this, the instructor barely even seemed to be listening to her. Deeply frustrated, Yu Hoyun complained about not even having a place to shower. The guy next to her asked if she had really just blurted that out. He warned her that the headmaster would tell her a dungeon is no luxury resort. She sighed, knowing he was right. Hun Wook then coldly chimed in. He told her that she would face far worse horrors as a real hunter. Whining about a little dust on her clothes was completely pointless right now. Fighting back her tears, she knew he was right, while Parkun tried to quiet her. Suddenly, the mage caught a strange sound echoing in the darkness. He asked if anyone else heard that, just as a massive ambush began. A swarming horde of pixies suddenly surrounded them from all sides. The squad leader shielded Yu Hoyun and ordered everyone to hold the line. They had to fight them off fast, but a nasty creature snuck behind her. It lunged at the weeping girl, ready to tear her apart. Hun Wook sliced through the beasts and shouted for someone to guard her. She was totally frozen in panic, while the young man gritted his teeth. He has no idea how to escape, or if destroying the dungeon core is even worth it. Or maybe they should just wait for the monsters to disperse on their own. He knew the cold-blooded faction leader would have easily thrown someone to the wolves, just using them as bait for the pixies while they kept moving forward. The young leader knew his brutal mentor had always used people as sacrificial lambs. To him, healers were basically just dead weight meant to be thrown away, but then Han suddenly remembered that not long ago, he was also dead weight. He has to make a choice right now because things are getting worse by the second. The young leader pinches the bridge of his nose, desperately trying to think. He keeps a serious face, but honestly his mind is totally blank. Suddenly, a panicked teammate screams his name as the boy stands there completely paralyzed in fear. A pixie face looms right in front of him, but it is instantly cut down. The cold-blooded Hash takes it out, warning everyone that they are running on empty. Their calm teacher points out this is a routine raid, making these results pathetic. Looking down at the muddy, shell-shocked Hun Wook, the mentor demands a reality check. He asks if the boy is going to pull himself together or just lay there. The young man acts completely bizarre, suddenly bowing right next to his mentor. The bewildered kid has no idea how to react to what is happening right now. He is so tongue-tied he cannot even find the words to speak. Meanwhile, the pixies keep raging, pulling the hair of the helpless magician. The tense Chu Jin is ordered to use his shield, while Li Shanyan holds 11 o'clock. Brave Han Yunyan is tasked with protecting the utterly terrified Yu Hoyan. The terrified Yu Hoyan cannot even stand up, so the fearless Hanung covers her. He focuses on the 8 o'clock position, while Park Sohun prepares the barrier. Counting down from 3, the calm teacher orders them to reform their line. They must take their positions, but the shocked protagonist realizes he went too far. He only lit a small fire in the deep dungeon to scare the kids a little. If he had known they would choke like this, he never would have done it. Still, the squad is actually fighting pretty well and holding their ground. Besides, there is no need to take on every single monster here anyway. They just need to hold out until the pixies flee, then handle the dungeon break. From the moment they entered this zone, Hun has been calling the shots. Everyone naturally followed his lead because he is their undisputed training captain. A leader's skill plays a huge part in their success. But they still cannot just rely on him to carry them through everything. That is exactly why this dungeon expedition ended up as a total disaster. It is a tough pill to swallow, and soon, director Hong Kong hears about it. He gets incredibly anxious while driving, demanding to know what the inspectors reported. Did they think the raid was a success, even though the zone is trashed? They decide to discuss the heavy damage later, and silence quickly fills the car. Nobody speaks inside the long minivan until they arrive, and teacher Hage speaks up. He tells them the evaluation grades will be out tomorrow, but some remain skeptical. They wonder why grades even matter when they literally just survived a disaster. The teacher tells everyone it is time to go home as night begins to fall. The sun sinks below the horizon, leaving a heavy, awkward tension in the air. Total silence. Inside the car, nobody knows how to break the ice. Our completely unbothered protagonist asks if Hyun-wook is heading back to the dorms, but gets no response. With a weary sigh, the teacher asks to talk with his student, prompting the principal and Kim Chaman to get out of the vehicle. Left alone, the man is ready to listen, urging the boy to speak up. He gravely promises not to pry, but says it is best to solve problems quickly. Suddenly, the young man breaks down, sobbing hysterically as he confesses that he simply cannot become a hunter. In his past life, the boy was incredibly rude and actively avoided talking to people unless it was absolutely necessary. Now looking closely at the small, quiet, brown-haired boy, he says he only came because the director called it an emergency. The stressed man insists only Hyun-wook can watch the child, leaving our confused protagonist to ask who this kid even is. The man replies that he has been his son for years, making Hyun-wook suspect a kidnapping. The hunter promises to rush back the second his dungeon raid is over. Begging the young man to guard the child, he also mentions that Jian is currently trapped in the dungeon, while Lee is far away overseas, so things are looking incredibly bad. The stunned protagonist has no idea how to react, remembering that he recently cleared a rank A gate without showing any fear. The guild master figures he can easily manage the kid. Hong Shakong adds that his credit card is on the table, telling him to buy whatever they need. But our hero refuses. Smiling warmly, the upbeat director simply shrugs and says he has absolutely no choice, declaring the conversation officially over. He pleads for his child's safety and quickly departs, leaving his poor colleague utterly flabbergasted. Alone, left with a quiet toddler, our hero has absolutely no idea what to do. At first, gathering himself, the hunter introduces himself as the master's chief disciple and asks the quiet boy his name, 2 years after graduating from the Hunter Academy. Hyun-wook established a guild that quickly took the world by storm. Honestly, the guy is an absolute monster of a talent on the battlefield, but seeing him hunched over, violently throwing up on the dirty ground, ruins the cool vibe. Still, that doesn't change the fact he's a great team member. His teammate silently watches as the suit-wearing hunter retches miserably on the dirt. Looking completely drained, a nearby healer rushes over, offering him some fresh water. But the leader refuses. He insists he is fine being one of the most famous rankers in Korea, but back in his past life, Woo Haijai always hated seeing such a celebrated figure pathetically retching in public. Wiping his mouth, the famous leader asks if our protagonist really is from the local hunter association, demanding to hear his real name. Our hero simply asks if they have crossed paths before, but the leader shakes his head, saying it is their very first time meeting, still looking pale. The guild leader mutters that the name sounds incredibly familiar, yet he just cannot place it. The staff member warns they are already running dangerously behind schedule, but Hyun-wook cannot comprehend why they are rushing into a dangerous zone, pulling a steel flask from his jacket, the chubby Hunter boasts that he will handle everything, greedily chugging down his drink. Liquid. This shocked and puzzled our hero. Shaking, the nerve-wracked guy asked if he had lost his mind, drinking alcohol right after crossing the dangerous gate. Vuk remained completely calm. He replied that his brain barely functioned without it. Smiling casually, he added that he always brings a drink before a raid. He slipped the flask away. Grinning, he suggested they wrap this up fast. They could drink together later. Right then, HJ made a silent promise. He would quit on the spot before ever working with this pig again. But for now, the young student was crying, sobbing, sniffling. His whining was starting to annoy the calm mentor, trying to control himself. The teacher faced the kid, deciding it was time to end the charade. Wiping his tears, the blonde-haired boy stammered out that it was not enough to just be a hunter. The mentor quickly handed him water. He told him to take a sip to calm down, receiving quiet thanks. Honestly, our protagonist could not stand dealing with people who did nothing but whine all day, expecting easy forgiveness without even realizing their mistakes. If Hyun-wook had been a real employee at the Hunter Association, he would have received a massive dressing down, but there was a reason why the teacher acted gently now, keeping his composure. The young mentor asked why he thought that way, wanting to raise a human, not an animal. The kid muttered that the mentor clearly heard some things, asking if it was true that the rumors were about his guild. Slowly calming down, the student admitted that hearing it made him sound like a true professional. Suddenly, the boy confessed that he had been bait for 3 years, acting exactly like them, which was extremely painful too. Remember now, the wise mentor had a pretty good idea of what he had endured, so he didn't judge him. It was a classic story of a naive kid getting dragged into a scam. Nobody should ever experience that. Long ago, Hyun-wook had sworn to become a real hunter, hoping to gather trustworthy allies and build his own grand guild. He wanted to protect people, but get this, when they were suddenly attacked by a swarm of pixies, something snapped in his mind. A horrifying thought arose: anyone useless in battle could be used as monster bait. The boy admitted he despised the faction leader for this, but that was before he did the exact same disgusting thing. He hated himself for it, but the mentor suddenly cut in, mentioning that he actually knew someone who grew up in those same conditions, yet chose a completely different path than Park Sohun. Our hero realized he was using Vuk's old history as a cover story, not worrying about it. The mentor explained how that young boy signed a contract, completely unaware of any other way to live, before escaping with help. The young man noted that this old friend's situation sounded exactly like the now quiet fighter. The mentor added that the boy faced the exact same struggles, keeping his own dark past a complete and total secret. Now understanding Hyun-wook's tragic history, our protagonist could finally relate to him. Learning Hyun-wook's story helps the main character understand him a lot better. In his fragile psychological state, the guy still can't shake off the shackles of his dark past. He constantly dwells on his old guild, the disaster in Menno, and current school troubles. Eugene could have easily warned him by revealing what happened in the past, but doing so now makes him feel like a villain. Clasping his hands together, the teacher mutters a dry, somewhat humorous remark. Truly bizarre seeing this reformed young man who once crawled around drunk, but now donates money and pays compensation to the victims on behalf of his old guild. In the past, he took a blade to protect the corrupt cowards who embezzled money from the faction, yet he kept pushing forward. His apprentice asks what the real goal is, and the mentor explains that he wants to help kids facing those same crushing difficulties. Once, an elite agent bluntly asked Hyun-wook if he actually realized that plenty of other people could easily handle this exact same matter. But Hyun-wook found the question incredibly insulting. The agent warned him he would get absolutely zero rewards, to which Hyun-wook shrugged, noting his father asked the exact same thing. Later, the chief asks if that is why Woo-hai stayed awake all night, but he quickly denies saying any such thing. The instigator smirks and asks if they truly want to escape this place so badly, but the annoyed fighter snaps that those are not his words. Clutching a small flask of liquor, the heavyset man realizes he has no choice but to answer the question directly. The man admits that he is definitely not a saint and would do absolutely terrible things. If it means getting exactly what he wants, the student asks what drives this. Desperate behavior, only to find out that Hanwook is terrified of hitting rock bottom. He desperately wants to prove he is above all that, prompting the hero to ask his disciple why he should not do the same. Staying perfectly calm, the teacher remarks that it is his own life and his own choice to make, but in the same breath he casually asks if the kid knows his former guild leader is already behind iron bars, leaving the student utterly speechless. The young man stammers no, and the teacher merely smiles, calling it unfortunate. The mentor then urges the young fighter to prove he can succeed without ever sinking to such dirty, underhanded tactics. Later that night, Eugene sits in a quiet tavern with Hung Shok-gong and Kim Chaman, laying out the entire tense situation. The director sighs, noting that if these kids cannot even clear a weekend dungeon, they have absolutely zero hope of becoming hunters. Eugene asks if any of the kids might need professional counseling, but the headmaster wonders if he means Hanwook. The teacher clarifies that Hansing is also completely burnt out, emphasizing that all the students are carrying immense mental weight. The young instructor strongly believes they must see a psychologist at least once to evaluate their fragile minds. Tossing leftover meat bone onto a napkin, Mr. Hong points out that therapy and counseling are great, but there is a massive catch. He asks what the odds are that the therapist would stay awake, but his colleague does not quite grasp his meaning. The director explains that a volatile hunter could snap during the evaluation, and who knows if a normal doctor could even subdue them. Eugene falls silent, but Kim Chaman suddenly chimes into the heavy conversation. She brings up a terrifying incident from a couple of years ago where a regular doctor was brutally killed by an out-of-control hunter. One of the fighters actually suffered a panic attack right mid-session. Meanwhile, Hong Kai-won keeps eating his chicken legs, muttering it was an accident, but then real trouble started. Word of the psychiatrist's sudden death spread rapidly through the morning newspapers, sparking instant chaos everywhere. Soon, a brunette lady explains that the medical staff are demanding strict measures to guarantee their safety, so they have started refusing to treat patients altogether. Take the mono control bracelet Hisha wears. She figured the hunters simply rejected the basic conditions. She notes that therapy sessions are now strictly held over the phone, meaning patients never even see their doctor's face. Sometimes desperate hunters even stalk their specialists. Honestly, it makes you wonder how our hero even managed his own therapy sessions without losing his mind. Meaning proper treatment is impossible, so hunters simply stopped showing up entirely. The teacher points out they are still just kids, yet they hold active licenses and possess ranks higher than rank D. Actively ignoring the heavy vibe, the older man, munching on his food, casually remarks that they cannot get any help. Hong Kai-won adds that if things were truly that bad, he would never have tagged along anyway, so there is no need to stress. Yet the teacher about the issue, but the director assures him he completely understands his feelings. Taking a slow sip of beer, he remembers another urgent matter to discuss. Specifically, that group they brought up before. Did not he mention earlier that the National Society of New Minds tried recruiting him by weaponizing basic child psychology? He wants our hero to dig up some useful intel since he is heading there. His buddy points out that this is his golden ticket to potentially